The world ended with a chime. Leo remembered it clearly, the crystalline sound that had echoed across the sky, followed by floating blue screens that appeared before every human on Earth. The system apocalypse, they called it. Earth had merged with some fantasy realm, bringing monsters, magic, and most importantly, classes that determined your worth in this new, brutal reality. 3 days later, Leo stood in the ruins of what had once been a suburban hardware store, his fingers tracing the jagged edge of a broken pipe. Above his head, visible only to him, floated his status screen. Name, Leo. Class, Novice Blacksmith. Level, 1. EXP, 0/100. Skills, Basic Forging, Material Identification. Inventory, empty. Novice Blacksmith, he whispered, the words tasting like ash. From outside came the sounds of combat, the clash of steel, the roar of something not quite animal, and triumphant shouts. Leo peered through the shattered window. A group of 4 adventurers, their classes proudly displayed above their heads, warrior, mage, archer, and healer, were finishing off a pack of wolf-like creatures with obsidian fur and glowing red eyes. The warrior, a muscular woman with a great sword that shimmered with energy, cleaved the last monster in 2. Blue light particles drifted upward as the creature dissolved. Easy pickings, she laughed, wiping blood from her cheek. These shadow wolves drop decent materials. Got 3 wolf fangs and some dark leather. Their eyes fell on Leo, still crouched in the ruined storefront. The mage, a young man with fire dancing at his fingertips, sneered. Look at this one. Hiding while real fighters handle the threats. The warrior's gaze flicked to the status above Leo's head. Her expression shifted from curiosity to contempt. Novice Blacksmith. Seriously? What are you going to do, craft us some nice dinnerware while monsters tear out our throats? Laughter echoed through the ruined street. The archer, a woman with hawk-like eyes, shook her head. Blacksmiths are support classes at best. You need a proper forge, materials, buyers, and even then, you'll never level fast enough to matter. Should have prayed harder when the system assigned you. They moved on, leaving Leo alone with the echo of their mockery. His hands clenched into fists. They were right, in a way. In these first days of the apocalypse, combat classes had immediate value. They could fight, gain EXP, secure territory. What did a blacksmith do? Hammer metal while the world burned? But survival demanded adaptation. Leo's stomach growled, he hadn't eaten properly since the merge. The system provided basic sustenance for everyone, but better food, shelter, safety, all that required contribution. And contribution required usefulness. He began scavenging in earnest. The hardware store yielded little, most tools had been looted already. But in the back, behind a collapsed shelf, he found a small, portable forge kit. Basic, meant for hobbyists, but it included a miniature anvil, a hammer, and a bellows that somehow still worked. More importantly, he found scraps of metal, a broken lawnmower blade, some copper piping, a few rusted nails. Skill activated, material identification. Blue text floated before his eyes. Low-grade iron scraps, suitable for basic forging. Durability, poor. Copper fragments, malleable but weak. Best for decorative work. It wasn't much, but it was something. Leo dragged his finds to a relatively intact garage 2 blocks away. The door was broken, but the roof held. He set up the portable forge on a workbench, using broken furniture as fuel. His hands trembled as he lit the fire, not from fear, but from a desperate, clawing hope. He had to make something. Anything. For hours, he worked. The basic forging skill guided his movements, but it was crude, inelegant. He heated the iron scraps until they glowed cherry red, hammered them on the anvil, folded the metal, heated again. Sweat dripped into his eyes. His muscles ached. Without proper tools, every strike was a struggle. But slowly, shape emerged from chaos. By dusk, he held it in his hands, a dagger. Crude, ugly, with a blade about 8 inches long and a hilt wrapped in torn cloth from his shirt. The edge was uneven, the balance off. But it was solid. It was real. Item crafted, iron dagger. Durability, 15/15. Damage, 5 to 8. Special, none. Creator, Leo. A notification chimed, but no EXP gain. Of course, crafting alone didn't level him. The system clearly valued combat above all else. Frustration boiled in his chest. He'd made something. Shouldn't that count for anything? He stepped outside, dagger in hand. The ruined neighborhood was quiet now, shadows stretching long as the sun dipped below broken rooftops. Then he heard it, grunting, the skitter of claws on pavement, a human cry of pain. Leo moved toward the sound, crouching behind an overturned car. In a small courtyard between collapsed houses, a hunter, a man with the tracker class displayed above his head, was fighting a goblin. Not the fantasy goblins of stories. This thing was taller, leaner, with mottled green-gray skin and too many teeth. Its eyes glowed with malicious intelligence. It wielded a jagged bone club, and it was winning. The hunter had a makeshift spear, but his movements were sluggish, one leg bleeding heavily. The goblin lunged. The hunter parried, but the force knocked the spear from his hands. He stumbled back, defenseless. Without thinking, Leo acted. "Hey!" he shouted, stepping from cover. Both combatants turned. The goblin hissed, saliva dripping from its fangs. The hunter's eyes widened. "Run, you idiot. It'll tear you apart." But Leo didn't run. He threw the dagger. It wasn't a good throw, he had no throwing skill. The dagger spun awkwardly through the air. Yet somehow, the blade struck true. It didn't hit the goblin, but embedded itself in the ground between them, quivering. The hunter stared, then snatched it up. "What is this? Some kind of joke? Use it!" Leo yelled. The goblin charged. The hunter raised the dagger, more in desperation than skill. The creature swung its bone club. Metal met bone. And the bone shattered. The hunter gaped as the dagger sheared through the club like it was rotten wood. The goblin screeched, staring at its broken weapon in confusion. Seizing the opening, the hunter stabbed forward. The iron dagger sank into the goblin's chest with a wet, crunching sound. The creature gasped, dark blood bubbling from its lips. It stumbled back, but didn't fall. Instead, its glowing eyes fixed not on the hunter, but on Leo. Recognition flashed in those alien eyes. "Creator. This human made the weapon that wounded me." With a final, gurgling roar, the goblin ignored the hunter entirely. It charged Leo, claws extended, moving with dying fury. Leo froze. Time seemed to slow. He saw every detail, the goblin's torn chest, the blood spraying with each heartbeat, the claws aimed at his throat. He tried to move, but his body refused. This was it. He'd survived the end of the world only to die because of his own pathetic creation. The claws came. He felt the impact, a searing line of fire across his neck. Warm blood soaked his collar. The goblin's momentum carried it past him, crashing into the wall behind. It slid down, twitched once, and fell still. Leo touched his throat. His fingers came away red, but the wound was shallow. A graze. A millimeter deeper and it would have opened his artery. He was alive. And then the system chimed. But this wasn't the gentle notification from earlier. This was a deep, resonant gong that vibrated in his bones. Golden text exploded across his vision, scrolling too fast to read at first, then settling into clear lines. Artisan's reckoning activated. Condition met, near death by own craft. Item, iron dagger. Threat, goblin warrior, level 3. Survival confirmed. Rewards calculating. EXP gained, plus 500. Level up. Level up. Level up. Leo's body surged with energy. It felt like lightning coursing through his veins, burning away fatigue, sharpening his senses. His status screen flickered and updated. Name, Leo. Class, Novice Blacksmith. Level, 4. EXP, 400/800. New skill unlocked, unstable enchantment. New material acquired, Monsters Dread X1. Inventory updated. He stared, uncomprehending. 500 EXP. 3 levels at once. That hunter had killed dozens of monsters and was only level 5. And the materials. In his inventory, visible only to him, floated a new item, Monsters Dread. The description read, a crystallized fragment of primal fear. Dropped when a creature dies terrified by a creator's craft. Used in enchantments that induce panic or rage. The hunter approached, holding out the dagger. You okay? That was too close. He looked at the blood on Leo's neck, then at the dagger in his hand. This thing, it cut through that club like nothing. What did you do to it? Leo took the dagger back. The blade was unmarked, not a scratch on it. I just made it, he said, his voice hoarse. Well, whatever you did, keep doing it. I've never seen a basic iron dagger perform like that. Almost like it, resonated with the fight. The hunter tossed him a small pouch. Payment. Not much, but it's something. Name's Kale. If you make more, find me. I'll buy them. Then he was gone, limping into the gathering dark. Leo stood alone in the courtyard, the dead goblin at his feet, his own blood drying on his skin. The dagger felt warm in his hand. No, not warm. Alive. Like it remembered the fight. His mind raced, connecting fragments. He'd crafted the dagger. It had been used in combat. The creature it wounded had recognized him as the creator. It had attacked him, nearly killed him. And because he'd survived. Massive EXP, rare materials. New skills. A laugh bubbled up from his chest, harsh and disbelieving. All this time, he'd thought his class useless. But the system hadn't given him a weak class, it had given him a cheat code with the most dangerous activation condition imaginable. Power didn't come from crafting perfect items. It came from crafting items that almost killed him. The implications unfolded like a poisonous flower. He could make weapons, give them to others, and when those weapons caused chaos, when they enraged monsters, provoked catastrophic attacks, pushed battles to the brink, he would be there. He would stand at the edge of death, and if he survived, he'd grow stronger. It was insane. Suicidal. But in a world where monsters roamed and warriors mocked him, it was also the only path to power he had. Leo looked down at his hands. They were stained with blood, the goblin's and his own. But they were steady now. The trembling was gone. He walked back to the garage, to his makeshift forge. The anvil sat waiting in the dim light. His mind was already working, designing. The iron dagger was just the beginning. What if he added the monster's dread to the next one? What if he used the unstable enchantment skill? What kind of weapon would that create? What kind of chaos would it unleash? And when that chaos turned on him, how much EXP would he gain then? A manic grin spread across Leo's face, reflected in the polished surface of the anvil. His eyes burned with a feverish light. The useless blacksmith was gone. In his place stood something new, a crafter who turned near death into infinite power. He picked up his hammer. The night was young. And he had so many terrible, wonderful things to make. The metallic tang of blood still clung to Leo's memory as he crouched in the damp shadows of the back alley. His throat bore a thin, scabbed line where the goblin's claws had grazed him, a permanent reminder of his first brush with death by his own creation. But more than the physical mark, it was the phantom sensation that haunted him, the electric jolt that had coursed through his veins when the system notification had flashed before his eyes. Artisan's reckoning activated. Near death by own craft, iron dagger. Rewards, plus 500 EXP, unstable enchantment skill unlocked, monster's dread material acquired. He'd leveled up 3 times in that single, terrifying moment. From level 1 Novice Blacksmith to level 4 in the blink of a near-fatal strike. The irony wasn't lost on him, in a world where warriors gained experience by killing monsters, he grew stronger by almost being killed by his own work. Now, hidden behind a stack of rotting crates in an alley 2 blocks from the main market square, Leo examined his prize. The monster's dread material glowed with a sickly purple light in his palm, about the size of a walnut but pulsing with malevolent energy. It felt warm, almost alive, and when he closed his eyes, he could hear faint whispers, echoes of the goblin's dying rage. His makeshift workshop consisted of a stolen anvil, he'd found it abandoned behind a collapsed smithy, a small portable forge he'd cobbled together from scrap metal, and his basic blacksmithing tools. The system had granted him the Novice Blacksmith class, which came with fundamental skills, basic forging, material identification, and now, unstable enchantment. Leo took a deep breath, the air thick with the smell of wet stone and distant sewage. He needed to test his theory. If surviving near death from his dagger had granted him such rewards, what would happen with something more dangerous? Something intentionally unstable. He placed a bar of scavenged steel on the anvil. His hammer strikes began rhythmically, each blow ringing through the narrow alley. With each impact, he focused his will, channeling the unstable enchantment skill he'd just unlocked. The skill description had been vague: imbue crafted items with volatile energies that may trigger unpredictable effects. Perfect. As the steel began to take shape, a short sword about 18 inches long with a simple crossguard, Leo reached for the monster's dread. The moment his fingers touched the glowing material, pain lanced up his arm. Not physical pain, but something deeper, a wave of primal fear, rage, and bloodlust that threatened to overwhelm him. He gritted his teeth, forcing the energy into the glowing steel. The sword began to change. Purple veins spread across the blade like cracks in ice. The metal itself seemed to pulse, breathing in time with Leo's own heartbeat. When he quenched it in a bucket of murky water, steam erupted not in a white cloud but in violent purple bursts that smelled of ozone and burnt anger. He held up the finished product. The rage-imbued short sword gleamed with unnatural light. His material identification skill provided details. Item: rage-imbued short sword. Quality: unstable. Effect: induces berserk state in wielder, increasing strength but eliminating rational thought. Durability: low. Creator: Leo. A dangerous weapon. Exactly what he needed. Leo waited until dusk, when the main square began to fill with adventurers returning from daily hunts. He positioned himself at the edge of the market, the sword wrapped in rough cloth. He didn't have to wait long. "You selling that?" The voice belonged to a man in leather armor too tight across the chest, with a freshly healed scar running from eyebrow to chin. His name, according to the floating system tag above his head, was Kale, level 7, brute warrior. Perfect. 50 copper, Leo said, keeping his voice low. A ridiculously low price for any enchanted weapon. Kale's eyes narrowed. "What's the catch?" "No catch. Need coin fast." Leo unwrapped the cloth just enough to show the purple-veined blade. "Try it." Kale took the sword. The moment his fingers closed around the hilt, his pupils dilated. A faint purple glow reflected in his eyes. "Feels powerful." His voice had taken on a strange edge. "It is," Leo said. "But be careful. It's—" "I know how to handle a sword, kid," Kale snapped, already counting out coins. He tossed them at Leo's feet. "Worth every copper if it kills like it feels." As Kale strode away, Leo scooped up the coins, his heart pounding. Now came the dangerous part: he needed to witness the sword in action, to be close enough that when it inevitably caused chaos, he might be caught in the crossfire. The thought made his stomach clench, but the memory of leveling up 3 times pushed him forward. He followed at a distance, keeping to shadows. Kale didn't head toward the city gates for monster hunting. Instead, he turned into a narrower street where tavern lights spilled yellow pools onto cobblestones. There, a group of 3 thugs blocked his path, local toughs who preyed on drunk adventurers. "Evening, friend," the largest thug said, cracking his knuckles. "Toll for passing through our street." Kale didn't respond. He simply drew the rage-imbued sword. The effect was instantaneous. Purple energy erupted from the blade, crawling up Kale's arm like lightning. His muscles bulged, veins standing out in stark relief. A low growl escaped his throat. "Not human, not anymore." "Wrong answer," the thug said, drawing a cudgel. Kale moved. It wasn't the controlled movement of a trained warrior. It was pure, unrestrained violence. The sword flashed, and the first thug's cudgel shattered. The second swing took the man's arm at the elbow. Blood sprayed across the cobblestones, and the thug's scream was cut short as Kale drove the sword through his chest. Leo watched from behind a rain barrel, his breath catching. This was more than he'd anticipated. The sword wasn't just making Kale angry, it was erasing him, replacing the man with a vessel of pure destruction. The remaining 2 thugs attacked together. One swung a chain, the other a short spear. Kale didn't parry. He took the chain across his shoulder, bones audibly cracking, and drove his sword through the spearman's throat. The chain wielder tried to run, but Kale threw the sword. It wasn't a throw. It was a release of built-up energy. The sword flew end over end, trailing purple light, and impaled the fleeing thug against a tavern door. The wood splintered. The man hung there, twitching, as Kale stalked toward him to retrieve his weapon. But the violence had attracted attention. City guards rounded the corner, 6 of them in polished armor, led by a captain with a glowing halberd. "Stand down," the captain bellowed. Kale turned, his eyes completely purple now. He ripped his sword free from the dead thug, and the body slumped to the ground. When he charged the guards, he wasn't a man anymore, he was a force of nature. Leo realized his mistake too late. He'd positioned himself to be near the danger, but this was beyond near. This was in the heart of it. Kale's first swing against the guard captain created a shockwave. The captain blocked with his halberd, but the force sent him skidding back 10 feet. The other guards surrounded Kale, but he spun, the rage-imbued sword creating a vortex of purple energy. Bricks tore from nearby buildings. A cart overturned. A lantern smashed, spreading fire across spilled ale. One guard lunged. Kale parried, but the force of the clash sent the guard flying, directly toward Leo's hiding spot. Leo tried to duck, but the guard's armored body smashed through the rain barrel. Wood splinters and filthy water exploded outward. Leo stumbled back, tripping over cobblestones as the dazed guard struggled to rise. Kale noticed the movement. His purple eyes locked on Leo. Recognition flickered, the creator of the sword. The source of this power. And in his berserk state, Kale's mind made the simplest connection, destroy the source. He broke through the guard formation, taking a spear through his thigh without slowing. The guard shouted, trying to regroup, but Kale was already charging toward Leo. Time slowed. Leo saw the rage-imbued sword raised high, purple energy crackling around it. He saw Kale's face, twisted beyond humanity. He saw the guards too far away to intervene. This was it. The near-death moment. But would he survive it? Leo scrambled backward, his hands scraping on rough stone. He had no weapon, no armor, just his level 4, Novice Blacksmith, class and the desperate hope that, Artisan's reckoning, would activate in time. Kale brought the sword down. Leo rolled. The blade struck the cobblestones where he'd been, shattering them in a burst of purple energy. Chunks of stone flew like shrapnel. One caught Leo in the side, tearing through his tunic and drawing blood. Another struck his forehead, and the world went blurry with pain. Kale raised the sword again. But the wound in his thigh finally gave way. He stumbled, the sword's point driving into the ground instead of Leo's chest. The impact caused the unstable enchantment to overload. The sword shattered. Not broke, shattered. 1,000 fragments of purple-veined steel exploded outward in a concussive wave. Kale was thrown back, his body slamming into a stone wall with a sickening crunch. The guards dove for cover. And Leo, still on the ground, could only raise his arms as the fragments and energy wave hit him. It felt like being struck by 100 tiny hammers. Shards embedded in his arms, his legs, his chest. The purple energy washed over him, burning where it touched open wounds. He tasted blood and ozone. His vision tunneled. But he didn't die. As the world faded to gray, the system notification burned behind his eyelids. Artisan's reckoning activated. Near death by own craft, rage-imbued short sword. Survival threshold, 7% health remaining. Rewards calculating. Pain spiked through every nerve ending, not from his wounds, but from the system itself. It felt like his bones were being remade, his blood replaced with liquid fire. He choked back a scream as words formed in his mind. Unstable enchantment level up, LV, 1 LV, 2. New effect unlocked, enchantments now carry residual creator signature, increasing backlash potential. Material acquired, Chaos Shard. EXP awarded, plus 300. Level up, level 4 level 5. The pain subsided, leaving him trembling on the cobblestones. He was alive. Barely. His health bar, visible only to him, showed a sliver of red. But he'd leveled up again. And in his inventory, a new space that had unlocked at level 5, rested the Chaos Shard, a fragment of crystallized purple energy that pulsed with the same malevolence as the shattered sword. Around him, the guards were recovering. 2 tended to Kale, who groaned but lived, the berserk rage gone with the sword's destruction. Others checked the dead thugs. The captain approached Leo. "You alive, kid?" Leo pushed himself up, wincing as shards of his own sword shifted in his flesh. "Barely. What happened here?" "That sword. I sold it to him," Leo said, the lie coming easily. "Just a blacksmith trying to make coin. Didn't know it would do that." The captain studied him, eyes narrowing. "That enchantment, unstable work. Dangerous. You should be more careful." "I will be," Leo promised, meaning it in a way the captain couldn't understand. He was allowed to leave after giving a false name. As he limped away, clutching his side where a particularly large shard had embedded itself, he felt eyes on him. Not the guards. From above. Leo glanced up as he turned into an even narrower alley. On a rooftop 2 buildings over, a figure stood silhouetted against the moon. Dressed in dark robes that didn't move in the wind. The figure held something, a ledger, perhaps, or a notebook, and was writing. Even at this distance, Leo could see the symbol embroidered on the robe's breast, scales balancing a sword and a coin. The Merchants' Guild. They'd seen everything. The creation, the sale, the chaos, his survival. Leo didn't wait to see more. He slipped into the shadows, the chaos shard, burning in his inventory like a promise and a threat. His body ached, his wounds bled, but he'd gained another level. Another skill upgrade. Another rare material. And now, he had the attention of powers that could crush him as easily as Kale had crushed those thugs. He smiled through bloody teeth. The game was getting dangerous. But danger, he was learning, was exactly where his power grew. The scent of sawdust and fresh paint filled Leo's nostrils as he surveyed his new domain. Reckoning Forge read the freshly painted sign above the door, the letters still glistening with moisture in the morning light. The shop was small, barely 15 feet wide and 20 deep, with a single workbench against the back wall, a display case that looked older than the system apocalypse itself, and a door that led to the cramped living quarters behind. But it was his. Leo ran a hand over the rough-hewn counter, his fingers tracing the grain of the wood. 2 days had passed since the berserk incident with Kale's sword, and the 300 EXP from that near-death encounter had pushed him to level 5. More importantly, the Chaos Shard material now sat on his workbench, a pulsating crystal that seemed to drink the light from the room. But today's project wouldn't use that. Today's project required something more, provocative. He'd spent the last of his coins on the shop deposit and basic materials, tanned leather from a dire wolf, iron rivets, and a vial of monster blood he traded for with the last of his scavenged goblin teeth. The idea had come to him in a fever dream after the skeleton attack. What if he could craft something that didn't just cause damage, but attracted it? The aggressor's embrace, he murmured to himself as he laid out the leather pieces. Not armor designed to protect, but armor designed to draw attention. To pull every monster in 100-yard radius toward the wearer like moths to a flame. His hands moved with practiced efficiency now. The unstable enchantment skill at level 2 flowed through him differently than before, less like a tool and more like an extension of his will. As he stitched the leather plates together, he focused on the concept of threat. Of dominance. Of being the most tempting target in any room. The enchantment wove itself into the seams, a subtle crimson glow that faded as soon as it appeared, leaving behind only the faintest scent of ozone. 3 hours later, the armor lay complete on his workbench. Simple leather pauldrons, a chest piece, and greaves, nothing fancy to look at, but Leo could feel the pull emanating from them. It was like standing near a magnet, a subtle tug at his awareness that whispered, "Come closer." He didn't have to wait long for a customer. The doorbell jangled at noon, and a hulking figure ducked through the doorway. The man wore mismatched plate and chainmail, with a shield strapped to his back that looked too heavy for most people to lift. "You the blacksmith?" he grunted, his voice like gravel. "Leo," he said, wiping his hands on his apron. "And you are?" "Bran. Tank for the Stonefist Guild." Bran's eyes scanned the shop, lingering on the empty display case. "We're a rookie guild. Just formed last week. Heard you sell interesting things." Leo's pulse quickened. This was it, the first real test of his shop. "I have something that might suit a tank." He gestured to the leather armor. "The aggressor's embrace. Guaranteed to make you the center of attention in any fight." Bran picked up the chest piece, turning it over in his massive hands. "Leather? I need something that can stop a troll's club." "This isn't about stopping attacks," Leo said, choosing his words carefully. "It's about controlling them. Wear this, and monsters will focus on you instead of your party. Your mages can cast uninterrupted. Your archers can pick targets at leisure." A slow grin spread across Bran's face. "How much?" 50 silver. A ridiculous price for leather armor, but Leo needed to recoup his shop costs. Bran didn't even haggle. He counted out the coins and strapped the armor over his existing gear. "We're raiding the catacombs of Whispering Bones tonight. If this works, I'll be back for more." As the door closed behind him, Leo let out a breath he didn't realize he'd been holding. The first sale from Reckoning Forge. Now came the waiting. He spent the afternoon organizing his tools, trying to ignore the knot of anxiety in his stomach. What if the armor didn't work? What if it worked too well? The unstable enchantment skill was unpredictable, that was its nature. At level 2, it now carried his creator signature, whatever that meant. The system notification had been vague. Enchantments bear the mark of their maker, influencing their behavior in subtle ways. Night fell, and with it came the sounds of the city settling into uneasy quiet. The system apocalypse had brought monsters to the streets after dark, and most sensible people barred their doors. Leo was polishing his workbench when he felt it, a vibration through the floorboards. Then another. And another. Rhythmic. Marching. He rushed to the window and peered through the shutters. The street was empty at first, then shadows detached themselves from the alleyways. Skeletons. Dozens of them, their bones clicking together as they moved with unnatural coordination. They carried rusted swords and shields, their eye sockets glowing with pale blue light. And they were heading straight for his shop. "Oh no," Leo whispered. The first skeleton reached his door and slammed a bony fist against the wood. Thump. Then another joined it. Thump thump. Within seconds, a dozen skeletal warriors were pounding on his door, their claws scraping against the wood, their empty jaws working soundlessly. Leo scrambled to barricade the entrance, shoving his workbench against it. The wood groaned under the assault. He could see cracks forming around the hinges. Think, he told himself. The armor, it must have drawn them here. Bran must have worn it into the catacombs, attracted every skeleton in the place, and then, run. Run straight back to the shop. The front window shattered inward, showering glass across the floor. A skeletal arm reached through, clawing at the air. Leo grabbed his iron dagger, the first thing he'd ever crafted, and hacked at the arm. Bone chips flew, but two more arms joined the first. He was going to die here. In his own shop, killed by his own creation. The thought should have terrified him, but instead, a strange calm settled over Leo. This was the artisan's reckoning. This was how he leveled up. By surviving the impossible. More skeletons poured through the window, their bones clattering against the floor. They surrounded him, cutting off his retreat to the back room. Leo backed against the wall, dagger held in a white-knuckled grip. There were too many. A dozen at least, maybe more coming through the door which was now splintering in earnest. One skeleton lunged, its rusted sword aimed at his throat. Leo parried, but the force knocked the dagger from his hand. Another swung at his legs. He jumped, but not fast enough, the blade sliced through his calf, sending a spike of agony up his leg. He stumbled, blood soaking through his trousers. This was it. The near-death moment. But as the skeletons closed in for the kill, something changed. The leather armor pieces he'd sold to Bran, he could feel them now. A connection, thin as spider silk but unmistakable. The enchantment he'd woven was overloading, reacting to the concentration of undead energy. A crimson wave erupted from nowhere, visible only as a distortion in the air. It washed over the skeletons, and for a moment, they froze. Their glowing eyes flickered. Then, as one, they turned away from Leo and began attacking each other. Claws tore through rib cages. Swords shattered spinal columns. The skeletons fought with mindless fury, reducing each other to piles of bones. Leo watched, breathless, as the last standing skeleton collapsed into a heap of disconnected parts. Silence. Then the system notification appeared in his vision. Artisan's reckoning triggered, near death by own craft. Survived aggressor's embrace overload event. Rewards, plus 400 EXP. New material acquired, Bone Essence X12. Skill upgrade, Alchemical Fusion skill unlocked. Warning, Creator signature has left traceable magical residue. Leo slumped against the wall, his legs screaming in protest. The EXP pushed him from level 5 to level 6, but the surge of energy was immediately followed by crushing fatigue. It felt like every muscle in his body had turned to lead. His vision swam, and he had to clutch the wall to stay upright. That was new. The system had warned about costs, but he hadn't expected this, the bone-deep exhaustion that made even breathing feel like work. He limped through the wreckage of his shop, stepping over scattered bones. The door hung from one hinge, the window was gone entirely, and glass and bone fragments covered every surface. But he was alive. As he began the painful process of boarding up the window with what remained of his workbench, something caught his eye. A slip of parchment on the floor, just inside what was left of the doorway. It must have been slipped under the door during the chaos. Leo picked it up. The handwriting was precise, almost mechanical. Your crafts disrupt the balance. Cease or face consequences. No signature. No indication of who had sent it. But Leo knew. The shadowy figure from the rooftop after the Berserk incident. The Merchants Guild was watching. He crumpled the note in his fist, the fatigue momentarily forgotten. A slow smile spread across his face, not of joy, but of grim determination. They thought they could scare him. They thought a vague threat would make him stop. Leo looked at the bone essence materials now sitting on his only remaining shelf, pale, glowing fragments that pulsed with captured necrotic energy. He had alchemical fusion now. He could combine materials. Create something new. Disrupt the balance, he murmured to the empty shop. You haven't seen anything yet. Outside, the first hints of dawn painted the sky in shades of gray. Somewhere in the city, Bran was probably celebrating a successful dungeon raid, unaware that he'd almost gotten his blacksmith killed. Somewhere else, a member of the Merchants Guild was waiting for a response. Leo limped to his workbench, uncrumpled the note, and smoothed it out. Then he took a piece of charcoal and wrote a single word beneath the threat. No. He pinned it to the wall above his workbench, a reminder and a declaration. The Reckoning Forge was open for business. And business was about to get very, very dangerous. The morning after the skeleton horde attack left Leo with ringing ears and aching bones, a sharp knock echoed through the quiet of Reckoning Forge. Leo winced, his fingers still trembling slightly as he wiped alchemical residue from his workbench. The threatening note from the Merchants Guild lay crumpled in the corner, a silent reminder that his growing reputation came with dangerous attention. He opened the door to find two figures standing in the dusty street. The first was a woman in polished leather armor, her hair tied back in a practical braid, with the emblem of a crossed sword and shield pinned to her chest, the Adventurers Guild insignia. Beside her stood a younger man with a longbow slung across his back, his eyes wide with curiosity as he peered past Leo into the dim interior of the shop. Leo of Reckoning Forge, the woman asked, her voice crisp and professional. I'm Captain Alara of the Adventurers Guild. This is Ren, one of our archers. Leo nodded, his throat dry. What can I do for you? Alara stepped inside without waiting for an invitation, her eyes scanning the workshop with clinical precision. She noted the scorch marks on the walls from the skeleton incident, the half-finished leather armor on a mannequin, and the scattered tools that spoke of frantic activity. We've heard rumors, she said, turning to face him. About your unique crafting methods. Some say your weapons are unstable. Others claim they're the most effective tools they've ever wielded. Ren chimed in eagerly. Kale from the tavern won't stop talking about that rage sword of yours. Said it cut through 3 thugs' armor like butter before things got messy. Alara held up a hand to silence him. We have a goblin extermination quest in the Whispering Woods. Standard contract, clear out a nest that's been harassing trade caravans. But our scouts report the goblins have dug in deep, using tunnels and ambush tactics. We need something to flush them out without risking our fighters in close quarters. She pulled a scroll from her belt and unrolled it on Leo's workbench. It showed a crude map of the woods, with red marks indicating goblin positions. We need explosive tipped arrows. Something that can be fired into their tunnels or clustered groups from a distance. Our usual alchemist can't produce enough for the volume we need, and his mixtures are predictable. Leo felt a familiar thrill mixed with dread. This was exactly the kind of commission that could trigger Artisan's reckoning, mass-produce dangerous items used in combat where he'd be present. But the Merchants Guild's warning echoed in his mind. Explosive arrows are tricky, he said cautiously. The balance has to be perfect. Too much force in the shaft, and they break on launch. Too volatile in the tip, and they explode in the archer's face, Alara finished. We know the risks. But we've seen what your crafts can do. The guild is willing to pay triple the standard rate for 50 arrows. Delivery in 2 days. Triple rate. Leo calculated quickly, that would buy him enough materials for weeks of experimentation, not to mention food and repairs for his battered shop. More importantly, it was a chance to test his new alchemical fusion skill in a controlled-ish environment. The system had granted it after the skeleton incident, describing it as the ability to merge volatile substances into stable-ish compounds. The parentheses in the system description were never comforting. I'll do it, Leo said. But I need to be on site during the mission. Alara raised an eyebrow. Blacksmiths don't usually join extermination quests. These aren't usual arrows, Leo countered. If there are misfires or adjustments needed, I need to be there to fix them. Plus. He searched for a plausible excuse. I need to study how they perform in actual combat. For future improvements. After a moment's consideration, Elara nodded. Very well. But you stay at the rear with the archers. No heroics. We leave at dawn, 2 days from now. The next 48 hours passed in a blur of focused madness. Leo worked through the night, his workshop illuminated by flickering lanterns as he experimented with alchemical mixtures. The chaos shard from Kale's sword incident proved invaluable. When ground to powder and mixed with sulfur and charcoal, it created a vibrant purple compound that shimmered with unstable energy. His alchemical fusion skill activated almost instinctively as he worked. His hands moved with a precision he didn't fully understand, measuring powders and liquids in ratios that felt right in his bones. The system interface flickered at the edge of his vision. Alchemical fusion LV1 active. Volatility, high. Stability window, 12 to 48 hours after creation. Perfect. The arrows would be stable enough to transport but would reach peak volatility right during the mission window. He crafted the arrowheads first, small metal cones with hollow interiors. Using delicate tools, he packed each with the purple explosive mixture, then sealed them with a wax compound that would melt from friction heat when the arrow struck. The shafts were trickier, they needed to be flexible enough to survive launch but rigid enough not to snap from the weight of the explosive tips. By the morning of the mission, 50 arrows lay in neat rows on his workbench, their purple-tipped heads gleaming ominously in the dawn light. Leo packed them carefully into 2 reinforced quivers, his hands steady despite the adrenaline coursing through him. This was it, another chance to dance with death and reap the rewards. The Whispering Woods lived up to their name. As Leo followed Elara's team of 15 adventurers into the dense forest, the wind through the pines sounded like whispered secrets. The air grew colder as they descended into a ravine where the goblins had made their nest. Ren fell into step beside Leo, his longbow held ready. Never seen a crafter on a field mission before, he said quietly. Most of them are too precious about their fingers to risk them out here. I'm not most crafters, Leo replied, his eyes scanning the shadows between trees. The underbrush was trampled in places, goblin tracks. Elara signaled for the team to halt at the edge of a clearing. Ahead, the mouth of a cave yawned darkly, surrounded by crude totems made of bones and feathers. Scouts confirm at least 30 goblins inside, she whispered. They've dug connecting tunnels, if we go in, they'll flank us. Ren, take your archers to the high ground. Leo, with them. Leo followed Ren and 4 other archers up a rocky slope that overlooked the cave entrance. From here, they had a clear line of sight to the mouth of the cave and several smaller openings that dotted the hillside, escape tunnels, most likely. Ren tested the draw on his bow, then nodded to Leo. Let's see what your toys can do. Leo handed him one of the explosive arrows. The purple tip seemed to pulse faintly, as if alive. Aim for the main entrance, he instructed. The impact should trigger the explosion. Ren knocked the arrow, drew back, and released. The arrow flew true, a purple streak against the green forest. It struck the stone above the cave entrance. And the world exploded. The detonation was louder than anything Leo had ever heard. A shockwave of purple fire bloomed from the impact point, tearing stone from the hillside and sending debris flying in all directions. Goblins shrieked from within the cave, their cries panicked and furious. Again. Ren shouted, already reaching for another arrow. The archers fired in volleys, purple-tipped arrows arcing through the air to strike the hillside around the cave. Each impact produced a concussive blast that shook the ground. Leo watched, mesmerized and terrified, as his creations did exactly what he designed them to do. Then things went wrong. Ren fired his 5th arrow, but this one flew slightly wide, striking a rocky outcropping to the left of the cave. The explosion was normal at first, a burst of purple flame. But then Leo saw it, a spark from that detonation landed in a patch of dry brush that had been soaked with leaked alchemical mixture from one of the earlier misfires. He hadn't noticed the tiny crack in that arrow's seal. The brush ignited instantly, the fire spreading with unnatural speed along an invisible trail of spilled powder. Leo's eyes widened as he traced the path, it led right back to where the archers had placed their spare quivers. The arrows, he screamed. Move the... The world turned white and deafening. A chain reaction of explosions ripped through the archer's position. One quiver detonated, then another, setting off a catastrophic cascade. The ground beneath Leo's feet heaved upward. Heat seared his skin even through his leather apron. He was thrown backward, his body slamming against a tree with enough force to crack ribs. Time slowed to a crawl. Fragments of arrow shafts became deadly shrapnel, whizzing past his head. Chunks of rock from the shattered hillside rained down around him. A piece of burning wood struck his shoulder, setting his clothes alight. Through the chaos, he saw a wren thrown clear, the archer's body limp as it tumbled down the slope. Leo scrambled on hands and knees, his vision blurring from smoke and pain. He needed cover. Now. A large boulder offered meager protection just 10 feet away, an eternity in this storm of his own making. Another explosion rocked the hillside, closer this time. The shockwave lifted him off the ground and slammed him down again. His ears rang with a high-pitched whine that drowned out all other sound. He crawled, each movement agony, his burned hands leaving smears of blood and ash on the ground. Almost there. 5 feet. 3. A final, massive detonation, the remaining quivers going up simultaneously, sent a fireball rolling up the slope. Leo threw himself behind the boulder as the wave of heat and force passed over him. The air was sucked from his lungs. His clothes smoldered. The world went silent except for that terrible ringing. Then, floating in his vision despite the smoke and pain. Artisan's reckoning triggered. Near death by own craft, explosive arrows. Survival confirmed. Rewards. Plus 450 EXP. Level up, 6-7. Alchemical fusion skill upgraded, LV, 1 LV, 2. New material acquired, blast powder X8. System note, temporary sensory penalty applied, hearing impaired for 24 hours. Leo lay behind the boulder, gasping for air that tasted of sulfur and burned things. His clothes were singed, his skin blistered in places, his ribs screamed with every breath. But he was alive. And he'd leveled up again. The ringing in his ears began to subside slightly, replaced by a muffled quality, as if he were underwater. He could see Elara shouting orders to her fighters, her mouth moving but the words reaching him as distant, distorted sounds. Adventurers were rushing up the slope to check on the archers. Ren was sitting up, dazed but alive, being helped by a healer. Slowly, painfully, Leo pushed himself to his feet. The hillside looked like a war zone, craters from the explosions, scorched earth, shattered trees. His arrows had certainly flushed out the goblins, dozens of the creatures lay dead or dying around the cave entrance, caught in the blasts. The few survivors were being cut down by Elara's fighters. The mission was a success. Catastrophically, dangerously successful. Elara finished directing her team, then turned and climbed the slope toward Leo. Her face was smudged with ash, her armor dented from flying debris. She stopped before him, her eyes assessing the damage, to the hillside, to her archers, to him. Leo prepared for the anger. The accusations. The demand for compensation for nearly killing her team. Instead, Elara did something unexpected. She smiled. It wasn't a friendly smile, it was the sharp, calculating expression of someone who has just seen a weapon perform beyond all expectations and is already calculating how to use it again. Her voice reached Leo as a muffled rumble, but he could read her lips clearly enough. "Well," she said. "That was certainly effective." She gestured to the devastation around them. The obliterated goblin nest. The craters that had collapsed their tunnel network. The absolute, overwhelming destruction wrought by 50 arrows. "We've been trying to clear that nest for weeks. Lost 2 teams to ambushes in those tunnels. You just solved it in 5 minutes." Leo tried to speak, but his throat was raw from smoke. He coughed, wincing at the pain in his ribs. Elara continued, her gaze intense. "The guild has been watching you, Leo. The rage sword incident. The skeleton attracting armor. Now this." She waved a hand at the blasted hillside. "Every time, there's collateral damage. Every time, you nearly get yourself killed. But every time, the results are unprecedented." She stepped closer, lowering her voice even though Leo could barely hear it. "I'm not here to reprimand you. I'm here to make an offer. The Adventurers Guild wants you as our exclusive crafter. Full patronage. Access to our material stockpiles. Protection from competing interests." Her eyes flickered meaningfully, she knew about the Merchants Guild's warning. "Your weapons are dangerous," she admitted. "Unstable. Sometimes catastrophic. But they work. And in this world, results are the only currency that matters. She extended a hand, not for a handshake, but as a gesture of partnership. What do you say, Leo? Will you craft for us? We'll pay whatever you ask. And we'll make sure you survive long enough to keep creating. Leo looked at her hand, then at the destruction surrounding them, the proof of his power and his peril. The ringing in his ears was beginning to fade, replaced by the distant sounds of adventurers tending to wounds and collecting goblin ears as trophies. The smell of smoke and blood hung heavy in the air. Somewhere in the back of his mind, the system interface flickered with his new level, his upgraded skill, the blast powder material waiting to be used. The artisan's reckoning had paid out again. He'd danced with death and been rewarded. And now the most powerful guild in the region was offering him the one thing he needed most, more opportunities to do it again. He took Alara's hand. His burned palm stung at the contact, but he didn't let go. I'll need a bigger workshop, he said, his voice hoarse but clear. And hazard pay. Alara's smile widened. Done. As they shook on it, Leo looked past her to the smoking hillside, to the craters left by his arrows, to the beginning of a partnership that would either make him legend or get him killed. Probably both. The real work was just beginning. The morning sun cast long shadows across the market square of Haven's Rest, but today the usual bustle of traders and adventurers had been replaced by a different kind of energy. A crowd had gathered around a makeshift arena of cobblestones cleared of vendors, their murmurs rising like steam from hot cobbles. At the center stood two forges, their coals glowing with orange promise. Leo wiped sweat from his brow, the heat from his borrowed forge already baking through his simple tunic. Across the 20-foot gap, Goran stood with arms crossed, his massive frame casting a shadow over an anvil that looked like it had seen 3 generations of smiths. The rival blacksmith's face was a mask of barely contained fury, his eyes fixed on Leo with the intensity of a predator sighting prey. You think you're a real craftsman? Goran's voice boomed across the square, silencing the crowd. Selling toys that explode and armor that summons the dead. That's not blacksmithing, that's chaos. A representative from the Merchants Guild stepped forward, a slender man in immaculate robes who moved with the grace of a cat. His nameplate identified him as Silas, and his smile didn't reach his cold, calculating eyes. The terms are simple, Silas announced, his voice carrying without effort. 3 hours to craft your best weapon. The judges from our guild will evaluate based on durability, effectiveness, and marketability. His gaze lingered on Leo. The winner gains exclusive rights to sell in the central market for 1 month. Leo's hands tightened on his hammer. This wasn't just about pride, Goran had orchestrated this to cripple Reckoning Forge before it could establish itself. The Merchants Guild's involvement was no coincidence either, Silas had been watching since the Berserk incident with Kale. This was a test, and possibly a trap. Begin. Silas declared, and the sand timer was flipped. Goran moved with practiced efficiency, his hammer striking steel with rhythmic certainty. He worked a broad piece of high-carbon steel, folding and refolding it with the expertise of someone who'd spent decades at the forge. Sparks flew like angry fireflies as he shaped what would clearly become a broadsword, heavy, reliable, the kind of weapon guilds bought by the dozen for their frontline fighters. Leo approached his own work differently. He selected a smaller billet of iron, but his mind wasn't on conventional strength. The chaos shard from the Berserk incident glowed with faint purple light in his materials pouch, and the bone essence from the skeleton attack felt cold and heavy. His fingers traced the unstable enchantment skill in his mind, level 2 now, with that strange creator signature effect he hadn't fully tested. What if, Leo thought as he heated the iron, instead of rage or aggression? I channel something subtler. The memory of nearly dying multiple times flashed through him, the debris from Kale's rampage, skeleton claws at his throat, the deafening explosion of his own arrows. Each time, something had been stolen from him, energy, vitality, the very will to keep breathing. What if a weapon could do that to others? He began hammering, not with Goran's brute force, but with precise, measured strikes. As the iron took shape into a slender dagger, Leo reached for the chaos shard. The material seemed to pulse in his hand, responding to his intent. With his alchemical fusion skill at level 2, he didn't just embed the shard, he dissolved it into the molten metal at a molecular level, the purple energy spreading through the blade like veins. Next came the bone essence. He crushed it to powder and mixed it with quenching oil, the mixture turning milky white. When he plunged the glowing dagger into the liquid, steam erupted with a hiss that sounded almost like a sigh. The blade emerged darker than it should have been, drinking the light rather than reflecting it. 2 hours remaining. Silas announced, his eyes noting every step of Leo's unorthodox process. Goran's broadsword was taking magnificent shape, a full 40 inches of gleaming steel with a guard shaped like roaring lions. He was now engraving runes of durability along the fuller, his chisel moving with artistic precision. The crowd murmured appreciatively, this was traditional craftsmanship at its finest. Leo ignored them. He focused on the final enchantment, pouring his will into the dagger. The unstable enchantment skill activated, but instead of channeling rage or aggression, he focused on depletion, on drain, on the moment when life flickers closest to extinction. The blade drank his intention, growing colder in his hand until frost formed on his fingers. A notification flickered at the edge of his vision, but he dismissed it. Not yet. When the sand timer ran empty, both weapons rested on velvet-lined tables before the judges. Goran's broadsword was a masterpiece of conventional smithing, balanced, sharp, engraved with protective runes that glowed faintly blue. It spoke of reliability, of battles won through strength and endurance. Leo's dagger was unsettling. 8 inches of dark metal that seemed to absorb light, with a subtle curve like a fawn. No runes, no decoration, just lethal simplicity. It looked less like a crafted weapon and more like something that had grown in shadow. The testing phase, Silas said, gesturing to a muscular guild enforcer who stepped forward. Durability first. The enforcer took Goran's broadsword first, bringing it down on a test block of enchanted oak. The blade cleaved clean through, embedding itself in the stone beneath. Not a chip, not a wobble. The crowd applauded. When he took Leo's dagger, the enforcer hesitated. The weapon felt wrong in his hand, cold and somehow hungry. He struck the same test block. The dagger didn't cut so much as, dissolve through the wood, leaving edges that looked withered rather than severed. The enforcer shuddered and nearly dropped it. Effectiveness test, Silas said, his interest visibly piqued. They brought out practice dummies, magically animated constructs that could simulate combat responses. Goran's broadsword performed flawlessly, the enforcer dismantling a dummy with efficient, powerful strokes that demonstrated the weapon's perfect balance and edge retention. Then came Leo's dagger. The enforcer approached the second dummy, but as he raised the blade, something changed. The dagger seemed to guide his hand, striking not at armor points but at joints, at the dummy's magical core. With each touch, the dummy's movements grew sluggish, its defensive spells flickering and dying. On the fifth strike, the construct simply stopped, collapsing into inert materials as if its energy had been siphoned away. What did you do? Goran demanded, stepping forward. That's not normal enchantment. Marketability test, Silas said smoothly, though his eyes gleamed. Real-world conditions. Another enforcer stepped forward, this one younger, less experienced. Silas handed him Leo's dagger. Spar with your partner. Let's see how it handles in live combat. The two enforcers squared off, the one with Goran's broadsword facing the one with Leo's dagger. They began a practice duel, steel ringing against steel. At first, the broadsword dominated with its reach and power, forcing the dagger wielder back. Then the dagger found its first touch, not a deep cut, just a grazing slash along the broadsword wielder's forearm. The man gasped. Not from pain, but from sudden, overwhelming fatigue. His next swing came slower, his breath labored. The dagger wielder pressed the advantage, each minor cut sapping more energy from his opponent. Within a minute, the broadsword wielder was moving as if through thick mud, his face pale, sweat pouring down his temples. Enough. Silas called, but the dagger wielder seemed caught in a trance, pressing forward for a killing strike. Leo realized his mistake too late. The unstable enchantment's creator's signature effect, the weapon recognized him as its maker and responded to his subconscious. His own near-death experiences, his hunger for survival, had been baked into the steel. And now that hunger was manifesting. The dagger wielder lunged for a final strike at his staggering partner. The broadsword wielder tried to parry, but his arms moved with dreamlike slowness. Steel met steel, and the dagger sheared clean through the broadsword's blade as if it were rotten wood. The broken tip of Goran's masterpiece spun through the air, tumbling end over end directly toward Leo's face. Time slowed. Leo saw the jagged steel fragment rotating, sunlight glinting along its newly broken edge. He tried to move, but his feet felt rooted to the cobblestones. The broadsword tip, still sharp, still heavy, would impale his eye and punch through his brain. This wasn't debris from a berserk rampage or skeleton claws or explosive backlash. This was his own creation, his life-drained dagger, causing a chain reaction that would end him. He threw himself sideways, but not fast enough. The steel fragment grazed his temple, opening a gash that sprayed blood across the cobbles. It continued downward, toward his foot. Leo twisted, his boot scraping stone as he tried to pull his foot away. The broken blade struck the ground exactly where his foot had been a half-second before, embedding itself in the crack between cobblestones with a metallic shriek. It vibrated there, standing upright like a tombstone. Silence. Then pain exploded through Leo's head, and the world swam. He collapsed to one knee, blood dripping into his eye. But he was alive. The near miss, the almost killing, triggered it. Artisan's reckoning activated. Condition met, survived near fatal injury caused by crafted item, life drain dagger. Reward, plus 350 EXP. Level up, 7-8. New material acquired, soul fragment X1. New skill unlocked, lifesteal enchantment LV1. System cost, wave of dizziness and temporary spatial disorientation. The notifications burned behind his eyes even as the world tilted. Leo gripped the cobblestones, fighting the dizziness that threatened to swallow him. Soul fragment, the description flickered in his mind, crystallized essence of stolen vitality, useful for enchantments that manipulate life force. And the new skill, lifesteal enchantment, allowing him to consciously create what he'd accidentally made today. When his vision cleared, the crowd was staring. The dagger wielder had dropped the dark blade as if it were a serpent, his opponent collapsed and being helped away, pale and shivering. The winner, Silas announced, though his eyes were on Leo with unsettling intensity, is Leo of Reckoning Forge. Goran's face purpled with rage. He stormed toward Leo, stopping just short of the blood on the stones. This isn't over, he spat, voice trembling with fury. You think you're clever with your tricks? You've made an enemy today. I'll see your shop in ruins before the month is out. He turned on his heel, shoving through the crowd without looking back. Leo stood slowly, wiping blood from his face. The gash was already clotting, another perk of leveling up, his body healing faster. He retrieved his dagger, which felt different now in his hand. Not just a weapon, but a key that had unlocked something new. As the crowd dispersed, chattering about the unprecedented duel, Silas approached. The Merchants Guild representative moved with silent grace, his expensive robes whispering over cobbles. He stopped before Leo, that same smile that didn't reach his eyes. Fascinating work, Silas said, his voice low. Truly. Most craftsmen play with fire. You play with something darker. It gets results, Leo said, meeting his gaze. Indeed. Which is why the Merchants Guild would like to discuss a partnership. Silas produced a sealed letter from his sleeve. We can offer protection from disgruntled rivals. Resources beyond what the Adventurers Guild provides. Exclusive contracts with the wealthiest clients in Haven's Rest. Leo took the letter. The wax seal bore the guild's emblem, scales balanced on a sword. There are, of course, certain expectations, Silas continued, leaning slightly closer. Transparency in your methods. First refusal rights on your more innovative creations. And discretion regarding certain guild interests. His smile widened, showing perfect teeth. Think of it as mutual benefit. We stabilize your dangerous business model. You provide us with tools nobody else can make. He turned to leave, then paused. Oh, and Leo. Do consider carefully. The Merchants Guild doesn't appreciate being refused. And we do so hate market disruptions. As Silas disappeared into the thinning crowd, Leo looked down at the letter in his hand. The blood from his temple had smeared across the parchment. He'd won the duel, leveled up, unlocked a powerful new skill. But as he stared at the guild seal, he realized, Goran's vendetta was the least of his worries. He'd just caught the attention of the most dangerous faction in the city. And they weren't asking. They were making an offer he might not be able to refuse. The soul fragment glowed with an eerie blue light on Leo's workbench, pulsing like a captured heartbeat. After the forging duel, this new material had been his most intriguing acquisition yet, a crystalline shard that seemed to hum with latent consciousness. Leo ran his fingers over its smooth surface, feeling the faint vibrations that whispered promises of power. Sentient armor, he murmured to himself, the idea forming like molten metal taking shape. Not just attracting aggression like the leather armor, but something that thinks, that advises, and draws something far more dangerous. He spent 3 days in his workshop, the Reckoning Forge's hearth burning hotter than ever before. Using his alchemical fusion skill at level 2, he began merging materials, the soul fragment as the core, reinforced with steel plates salvaged from monster hide shipments, and a trace of the blast powder from his arrow experiments for conductivity. His unstable enchantment skill level 2 allowed him to weave a complex enchantment matrix, one that would create a symbiotic link between wearer and armor, granting tactical awareness at the cost of attracting elemental fury. On the fourth day, as dawn light filtered through the workshop's grimy windows, the armor stood complete. It was full plate, polished to a mirror sheen, with the soul fragment embedded in the chest plate like a glowing blue heart. When Leo touched it, whispers filled his mind, not words, but impressions, suggestions about balance, weak points, defensive stances. Whispering plate, he named it, the words feeling right. Advises the wearer in battle, and calls the storm. He knew exactly who would buy it. Sir Alistair, a noble knight of the city guard who frequented the Adventurers Guild's high-end commissions. The man had money, prestige, and a taste for exotic equipment. Leo sent a message through Alara's network, and by afternoon, Alistair stood in his shop, his eyes wide with avarice. "It speaks to you?" the knight asked, running gauntlet fingers over the chest plate. Whispers tactical advice, Leo confirmed, keeping his tone professional. "Tested it myself. In a simulated combat scenario with training dummies, it identified 3 optimal strike points I'd missed." He didn't mention the other test, how, when he'd worn it briefly in his courtyard, clouds had gathered unnaturally fast overhead, and a single lightning bolt had struck the ground 20 feet away, leaving the air smelling of ozone and his hair standing on end. Alistair didn't ask about weather phenomena. He saw only advantage. "How much?" 500 gold, Leo said, naming a price that made even the noble blink. "And I require a report on its performance in actual combat." "Done," Alistair agreed after a moment's hesitation, counting out coins from a heavy purse. "The autumn parade is tomorrow. I'll wear it then, perfect opportunity to show it off." Leo felt a thrill of anticipation mixed with dread. The autumn parade wound through the city's main thoroughfares, with thousands lining the streets. If the armor's storm-attracting properties manifested there. Perfect, he thought grimly. Asterisk maximum exposure. Maximum danger, asterisk. The next day dawned clear and bright, a crisp autumn morning that promised celebration. Leo positioned himself in the crowd along the Grand Promenade, trying to look like just another spectator. He wore simple traveler's clothes, his blacksmith's apron left behind at the shop. Around him, families cheered, children waved ribbons, and vendors sold spiced nuts and honey cakes. Then the parade began. First came the city guard in polished armor, then guild representatives waving banners, followed by performers and musicians. And there, riding a massive warhorse near the procession's center, was Sir Alistair in the whispering plate. The armor gleamed in the sunlight, the soul fragment pulsing with that same blue light. Even from 50 yards away, Leo could see Alistair's lips moving as he listened to the armor's whispers, his head tilting as if receiving instructions. The knight sat straighter, his movements more precise, every gesture calculated for maximum dramatic effect. For the first hour, nothing happened. Leo began to wonder if he'd miscalculated, maybe the lightning strike in his courtyard had been coincidence. Maybe the armor only attracted storms under specific conditions he hadn't replicated. Then the first cloud appeared. It formed directly above Alistair, a small, dark puff against the blue sky. No one noticed at first, too focused on the spectacle. But Leo saw it. He saw how it grew, how other clouds began drifting toward it from all directions, drawn as if by magnetic force. "Mommy, why's it getting dark?" a child nearby asked. People began looking up. The cheerful atmosphere shifted to confusion, then concern. The parade officials exchanged worried glances. Alistair, oblivious or perhaps too focused on the armor's whispers, continued his stately progress. The clouds coalesced into a single, roiling mass directly overhead, blocking the sun. The temperature dropped 10 degrees in minutes. A wind picked up, whipping banners and sending hats flying. "Storm's coming," someone shouted. But this was no natural storm. The clouds churned in a perfect circle above Alistair, lightning flickering within them like angry serpents. The air crackled with static electricity. Leo's hair lifted again, and he felt the charge building in the atmosphere, a pressure in his ears that had nothing to do with his lingering hearing loss from the arrow explosion. "It's working," he thought, his heart hammering against his ribs. "Too well." Alistair finally noticed. He looked up, his confident expression crumbling into terror. He tried to remove the chest plate, fumbling with the straps, but his fingers slipped on the suddenly slick metal. The armor was humming now, a low vibration that Leo could feel through the cobblestones. Then the first lightning strike hit. It didn't strike Alistair. It struck the fountain 20 feet to his left, shattering marble statues and sending water exploding into steam. The crowd screamed, surging back in panic. Parade formations broke as guards tried to maintain order. A second bolt hit a vendor's cart, setting it ablaze. The smell of burning wood and ozone filled the air. Leo's instincts screamed at him to run, but he forced himself to stay. This was the moment. The armor was doing exactly what he designed it to do, attracting catastrophic elemental force. And he was here, within range, exposed. Come on, he thought, staring at the swirling clouds. Come for me. As if hearing his challenge, the storm focused. The clouds tightened their spiral, and a third lightning bolt lanced down, this one aimed not at Alistair, but at the crowd. At Leo. Time seemed to slow. Leo saw the bolt forming, a brilliant white filament connecting cloud to earth. He saw the exact path it would take. He had maybe 2 seconds. His body moved without conscious thought, fueled by every near-death experience that had come before. He dove sideways, hitting the cobblestones hard as the lightning struck where he'd been standing. The impact was deafening, a thunderclap that shook buildings. Heat washed over him, searing the back of his tunic. Electricity arced through the wet stones, making his muscles convulse. But he was alive. The bolt had missed by inches. As he lay there, gasping, the system notification flashed before his eyes. Artisan's reckoning triggered. Near-fatal encounter survived, electrocution by crafted item, whispering plate. Rewards *. Plus 400 EXP. Level up. 89, ***. Skill unlocked, Weather Affinity LV1. Material acquired, Storm Core X1. System cost, 70% stamina depletion. The exhaustion hit him like a physical blow. Every muscle turned to lead. His vision swam, and he had to fight to stay conscious. But through the fatigue, he felt the new skill slot into place, Weather Affinity, Level 1. It came with instinctive knowledge, how to read atmospheric pressure shifts, predict storm patterns, sense electrical buildup. And in his inventory, accessible through his system interface, now sat a storm core, a crackling sphere of condensed lightning, humming with power. Around him, chaos reigned. The parade had disintegrated into a stampede. Guards were trying to evacuate the area, shouting over the continuing thunder. Alistair had finally torn off the chest plate, throwing it to the ground as if it were poisoned. The soul fragment's glow had faded to a dull blue. Leo forced himself to his feet, leaning against a wall for support. His stamina was nearly gone, every movement an effort. He watched as Alistair, pale and shaking, gathered the discarded armor pieces, mounted his panicked horse with difficulty, and rode not toward the parade's continuation, but back the way he'd come. Toward the Reckoning Forge. Leo arrived at his shop an hour later, moving slowly through alleys to avoid the main streets where guards were still restoring order. The stamina depletion made each step feel like wading through mud. He found Alistair waiting outside, the whispering plate piled unceremoniously by the door. "Take it back," the knight said, his voice trembling. "I don't care about the gold. That thing, it tried to kill me. It tried to kill everyone." "The tactical advice," Leo began, but Alistair cut him off. It whispered about optimal angles for crowd control during the panic. It was calculating how many civilians I could trample with my horse to reach safety faster. The knight's eyes were wild. "This isn't equipment. It's a demon." He threw a small pouch at Leo's feet, the refunded gold, plus extra. "Keep it. Just keep that thing away from me. Away from this city." Alistair mounted and rode away without another word. Leo stared at the discarded armor, then at the pouch of coins. He'd gotten what he wanted, the near-death experience, the level, the new skill and material. But as he bent to gather the plates, his back protesting the movement, he noticed something. Across the street, 2 city guards in official uniform stood watching. They made no move to approach, but their eyes were fixed on him, on the shop, on the armor at his feet. One of them was taking notes on a parchment. Leo carried the whispering plate inside, closing the door behind him. Through the window, he saw the guards take up positions, not hiding, but standing openly, visible sentinels. Surveillance. They'd connected the unnatural storm to his craft, to his shop. He placed the armor on his workbench, the storm core materializing beside it from his inventory. The blue sphere crackled with contained lightning, casting flickering shadows across the workshop. Outside, the guards didn't move. Leo smiled, though it felt strained. The Merchants Guild had been watching. Now the city itself was watching. Every creation brought more power, and more eyes. The reckoning was coming from all directions. He just had to survive it. The scent of damp earth and illicit whispers filled the narrow tunnel beneath the city's merchant district. Leo adjusted the dark hood of his cloak, the rough fabric scratching against his jaw as he followed a line of shadowy figures through the underground passage. His heart hammered against his ribs, not from fear of discovery, but from the anticipation thrumming through his veins. The black market auction was his only chance to acquire materials beyond the mundane ores and monster parts available through legitimate channels. Gold coins clinked softly in the leather pouch at his belt, earned from selling the Whispering Plate to Sir Alastair and various smaller commissions. The Merchants Guild surveillance had tightened around his shop after the Autumn Parade incident, forcing him to seek alternatives. This underground network, rumored to operate beneath the notice of both guilds, promised access to rarities that could elevate his crafting to new, dangerous heights. The tunnel opened into a cavernous chamber lit by flickering torchlight. Rough-hewn stone walls bore scars from pickaxes, suggesting this had once been a mining shaft repurposed for clandestine gatherings. About 30 people clustered around a makeshift wooden stage where an auctioneer in a featureless gray mask presided over a table of items shrouded in cloth. Leo's eyes scanned the crowd, adventurers with weapons poorly concealed beneath cloaks, merchants with calculating eyes, and a few individuals whose auras prickled with magical energy. He found a spot near the back, where shadows clung thickest, and watched as the auctioneer unveiled the first lot, a bundle of phoenix feathers that shimmered with residual heat. Bidding started at 50 gold pieces and quickly escalated. Leo kept his hands folded, conserving his funds. Next came a vial of manticore venom, then a set of obsidian shards said to be from a volcanic rift. Each item sold for sums that made Leo's accumulated gold seem paltry. Then the auctioneer's gloved hands lifted a cloth to reveal a single scale the size of a dinner plate. It gleamed with iridescent hues, deep crimson fading to gold at the edges, with patterns like molten metal frozen in time. Dragon scale, the auctioneer announced, his voice echoing in the chamber. Authenticated from the corpse of a juvenile fire drake slain in the northern mountains. Starting bid, 200 gold. A murmur rippled through the crowd. Dragon materials were legendary, even from a juvenile. Leo's fingers twitched. This was exactly what he needed, a material with inherent elemental affinity and durability that could withstand his unstable enchantments. He raised his hand. 210. A hooded figure across the room countered. 220. 230, Leo said, his voice steady despite the adrenaline. The bidding climbed in tense increments. At 280, Leo's opponent hesitated. Leo pushed. 300. The finality in his tone silenced the room. The auctioneer's masked face seemed to study him for a moment before bringing down the gavel. Sold to the gentleman in the dark cloak. Leo approached the stage, his boots scuffing against the gritty stone floor. He counted out 300 gold coins from his pouch, feeling the weight of his remaining funds dwindle to almost nothing. As he accepted the dragon's scale, its surface warmed to the touch, the auctioneer spoke again. A demonstration of its properties would be appreciated. Our patrons value practical verification. It wasn't a request. Eyes turned toward Leo, expectant and suspicious. He understood, they wanted proof he wasn't a guild plant or a fraud. Swallowing hard, he nodded. I'll craft something with it now. From a satchel at his side, he produced his basic blacksmithing tools, a small hammer, tongs, and a portable anvil he'd modified with stabilizing runes. He also retrieved a round shield blank he'd prepared earlier, made of tempered steel with a leather grip. Setting up on a cleared section of the stage, he felt the audience's gaze like physical pressure. This was a risk, crafting in public, especially with an audience that included potential rivals or enemies. But backing down would mark him as weak, possibly inviting robbery the moment he left. He placed the dragon's scale at the shield center. Using his alchemical fusion skill at level 2, he began the process of bonding the scale to the steel. His hands moved with practiced precision, the hammer strikes ringing through the chamber as he heated the metal with a small enchanted brazier. The scale resisted at first, its magical nature warring with the mundane steel, but Leo channeled his unstable enchantment skill at level 2, introducing controlled chaos into the fusion. Sparks flew, casting brief, violent shadows on the walls. As the scale melded into the shield, Leo felt a strange resonance, a primal energy stirring within the material. He didn't have time to analyze it, the craft demanded his full attention. Sweat beaded on his forehead under the hood. Finally, with a final hammer blow, the scale was inset securely, its iridescent surface now fused with the steel in a seamless, deadly beautiful pattern. He held up the finished shield, turning it to catch the torchlight. Murmurs of approval rustled through the crowd. Now tested, someone called from the shadows. Leo took a deep breath. He infused the shield with a touch of his lifesteal enchantment at level 1, not enough to drain anything significant, but enough to activate its latent properties. The moment the enchantment touched the dragon's scale, the shield trembled in his hands. A low, guttural sound emanated from it, not a vibration, but a true roar, deep and resonant, echoing the fury of the drake it had come from. The sound waves rippled through the chamber, causing torches to gutter and dust to sift from the ceiling. And then chaos erupted. From the corners of the chamber, where some attendees had brought monster pets chained or caged, came answering roars and snarls. A wolf-like creature with crystalline fur strained against its leash, eyes glowing with sudden rage. A scaled serpent in a glass case thrashed, cracking the enclosure. A pair of winged imps, previously docile on their perches, shrieked and took flight, diving toward the source of the sound, Leo. The shield's awakening a territorial response, someone shouted. Leo barely had time to raise the shield as the first imp slammed into it, claws scrabbling against the dragon's scale. The impact jarred his arm to the shoulder. He stumbled back, nearly tripping over his anvil. The wolf creature broke free, its handler cursing as it lunged across the chamber. Leo ducked, feeling the heat of its breath on his neck. The serpent's cage shattered, and it slithered toward him, fangs bared. This was it, the near-death encounter he both dreaded and needed. He could feel the Artisan's reckoning system hovering at the edge of his awareness, waiting for the trigger. He had to survive this. He swung the shield like a bludgeon, catching the wolf creature in the side. It yelped, but didn't retreat. The imps harried him from above, one scoring a shallow cut across his cheek with its talons. Blood trickled warm down his face. The serpent coiled, ready to strike. In that frozen second, Leo realized he was surrounded, outnumbered by enraged monsters in a confined space with no clear exit. He did the only thing he could think of, he channeled his weather affinity skill at level 1, focusing on the residual energy from the dragon's scale. The shield glowed brighter, and he slammed it against the stone floor. A concussive wave of sound and heat erupted, not a true storm, but a localized burst of atmospheric pressure that knocked the creatures back. The imps were flung against the wall, dazed. The wolf creature skidded across the floor. The serpent recoiled. But one of the imps recovered faster, diving at him with murderous intent. Leo raised the shield, but the creature altered its trajectory at the last moment, claws aimed at his throat. He twisted, but not enough. Razor-sharp talons ripped through his cloak and into the flesh of his shoulder, digging deep. White-hot pain lanced through him. He gasped, vision swimming. The imp wrenched its claws free, and Leo felt blood soak his tunic. As he collapsed to one knee, the shield clattering beside him, the system notification flashed in his mind. Artisan's reckoning triggered, near-fatal injury from crafted item, dragon-scale shield. Surviving encounter. Rewards, plus 380 EXP, level 910. Material acquired, Dragon's Fury, X1. Skill unlocked, Beast Roar LV, 1. Cost, deep laceration on shoulder, moderate blood loss. New energy flooded his veins, dulling the pain momentarily as he leveled up. The Beast Roar skill slotted into his consciousness, an active ability to emit a terrifying shout that could intimidate or enrage beasts, derived from the shield's properties. But he had no time to explore it. Around him, the auction attendees were scrambling to regain control of their pets or fleeing the chamber altogether. The auctioneer was gone, along with the remaining lots. Clutching his bleeding shoulder, Leo grabbed the dragon scale shield and his tools, shoving them into his satchel. He stumbled toward the tunnel entrance, ignoring the stares and curses thrown his way. The dragon's fury material felt like a hot coal in his pocket, but he didn't dare examine it now. He emerged into the night air, the city streets dark and mostly deserted. The auction had lasted hours, and it was well past midnight. His shoulder throbbed with each step, the deep scratch burning as if the imp's claws had left venom behind. He needed to get back to his shop, tend to the wound, and assess his new gains. He took a shortcut through a narrow alley between two warehouses, the cobblestones slick with recent rain. The moon was hidden behind clouds, casting everything in deep shadow. He was halfway through when figures detached from the darkness ahead and behind, 3 men, rough-looking, with clubs in their hands. They moved with purpose, blocking both ends of the alley. "Hand over the scale and whatever else you got from the auction," the lead thug growled, his face scarred and ugly in the dim light. Leo's heart sank. He was injured, outnumbered, and his stamina was still depleted from the whispering plate incident. "Who sent you?" he demanded, buying time as he gauged his options. "Goran sends his regards," the thug sneered. "Said you needed a reminder of your place." Before Leo could react, they rushed him. He tried to raise his good arm, but a club slammed into his ribs, driving the air from his lungs. Another blow caught him across the back, sending him sprawling to the wet cobblestones. Pain exploded through his body, the fresh shoulder wound, the bruised ribs, the impact of the fall. He tasted blood in his mouth. Rough hands tore the satchel from his grasp. He heard the clatter of his tools, the shield being pulled out. One of the thugs rifled through his pockets, finding the pouch with the dragon's fury material and his remaining gold. "This'll do," the man grunted. "Teach him a lesson," the lead thug said. Kicks landed on his sides, his legs. Leo curled into a ball, protecting his head as best he could. Each impact was a burst of agony. He heard the crunch of a rib, felt something give in his left arm. They didn't stop until he was gasping, barely conscious, the world reduced to a haze of pain and cold stone. "Consider this a warning," the lead thug spat. "Stay out of Goran's way." Then they were gone, their footsteps fading into the night, taking his hard-won materials, his gold, his shield. Leo lay in the alley, rain beginning to fall again, mixing with the blood on his clothes. The bruises were already forming, a tapestry of pain across his body. He had survived the auction's dangers, leveled up, gained a new skill, only to be stripped of everything by a jealous rival's thugs. As darkness crept at the edges of his vision, one thought burned through the pain: Goran would pay for this. The summons arrived at dawn, delivered by a stone-faced courier in the livery of the Merchants' Guild. The parchment was crisp, the wax seal bearing the guild's emblem, a balanced scale superimposed over a coin. Leo read it with bruised fingers, his shoulder throbbing beneath makeshift bandages. The message was terse: "Leo of Reckoning Forge, present yourself at the guild hall by midday. Matters of business and regulation require immediate discussion." No signature, only the seal. It wasn't an invitation, it was a command. Leo limped through the cobblestone streets, every step sending jolts of pain through his battered body. The deep laceration on his shoulder had scabbed over, but the bruised ribs and possible broken arm made movement agonizing. He'd lost everything in Goran's ambush: the dragon scale shield, the precious dragon's fury material, his remaining gold, even his basic forging tools. All he had left were the clothes on his back, the skills in his system, and the storm core material from the Whispering Plate incident. The city guards watched him from corners, their eyes tracking his progress. Word had spread: the blacksmith whose crafts brought storms and dragon roars was now a marked man. The Merchants' Guild hall loomed ahead, a 3-story structure of polished marble and wrought iron. Unlike the Adventurers' Guild's rough-hewn practicality, this building spoke of calculated wealth. Gold leaf trim adorned the windows, and uniformed guards stood at attention by the double oak doors. Leo took a breath, the air tasting of rain and impending confrontation. His stamina was still depleted from the auction attack and subsequent beating, but he straightened his posture, ignoring the protest of his injuries. This wasn't just about business, it was about survival. Inside, the hall was a cathedral of commerce. High ceilings arched overhead, supported by columns carved with scenes of trade caravans and market squares. Tapestries depicting historical guildmasters lined the walls, their embroidered eyes seeming to follow Leo as he was escorted through the main chamber. Dozens of merchants and guild officials milled about, their conversations hushed but intense. Leo caught snippets: market disruption, unregulated crafts, dangerous innovations. His name was on their lips, spoken with a mixture of curiosity and disdain. Silas, the Merchants' Guild representative who'd approached him after the forging duel, waited at the far end of the chamber. He stood beside a massive mahogany table where 3 senior guild members sat, 2 men and 1 woman, all dressed in fine silks and wearing expressions of detached authority. Silas offered a thin smile that didn't reach his eyes. "Leo. Thank you for coming promptly. These are Guildmasters Theron, Valeria, and Marcus. They oversee regional trade regulations." Guildmaster Theron, a bald man with a neatly trimmed beard and sharp eyes, spoke first. "We've been monitoring your activities, Leo. Your shop, Reckoning Forge, has caused considerable disruption. The unnatural storm during the autumn parade, the dragon roar at the black market auction, the public duels, each incident ties back to your crafts. He tapped a stack of parchment reports on the table. The Adventurers Guild may enjoy your explosive arrows and sentient armor, but we deal in stability. Predictable markets. Reliable goods. Guildmaster Valeria, her silver hair coiled in an elaborate braid, leaned forward. Your crafts are dangerous, Leo. They attract catastrophic events. The city guards have filed reports. Other blacksmiths complain you're undercutting prices with unstable enchantments. Goran, in particular, has been vocal about your methods. Her tone was cool, analytical. We cannot have a lone crafter destabilizing the entire ecosystem of trade. Leo felt the weight of their gazes, the unspoken threat in the room. He kept his voice steady, though pain lanced through his ribs with each breath. My crafts are effective. They help adventurers survive in a dangerous world. The system gave me this class, and I'm using it to its full potential. At what cost? Guildmaster Marcus interjected, his jowly face flushed. You nearly electrocuted half the city with that armor. And now we hear you were involved in a monster riot at an auction. Do you understand the liability? The Merchants Guild insures trade caravans, shops, and markets. Your creations are uninsurable risks. Silas stepped forward, his hands clasped behind his back. Which brings us to the ultimatum, Leo. The Guild is prepared to offer you a partnership, a full membership with access to premium material suppliers, protected trade routes, and guild-backed sales. In return, you'd operate under our direct supervision. All crafts would be pre-approved by our enchantment review board. You'd follow standardized pricing. And you'd cease production of any item deemed excessively volatile. Leo's mind raced. A partnership with strings, exactly what Silas had hinted at after the forging duel. They wanted to leash him, to turn his dangerous creativity into a controlled asset. He glanced at the guildmasters' faces, Theron's calculating stare, Valeria's detached assessment, Marcus's impatient scowl. They saw him as a problem to be solved, a variable to be eliminated or assimilated. And if I refuse? Leo asked, already knowing the answer. Theron's expression hardened. Then the Merchants Guild will issue a formal boycott. Every major material supplier in the region is guild-affiliated. No one will sell you ore, essences, shards, or cores. Your shop will be blacklisted from markets and auctions. Even the Adventurers Guild would struggle to supply you without crossing us. You'd be isolated, unable to craft anything more complex than a nail. Valeria added, it's not personal, Leo. It's business. The system apocalypse forced us to rebuild commerce from scratch. We can't allow one individual to jeopardize that with unpredictable power. Leo felt the trap closing. His injuries ached, his stamina was low, and he had no tools, no materials, no allies in this room. But something in him rebelled, the same instinct that had driven him to craft the Whispering Plate, to bid on the dragon's scale, to turn near death into power. He couldn't accept their control. The Artisan's reckoning system thrived on risk, on pushing boundaries. If he let them sanitize his crafts, he'd stagnate. I need a moment to consider, Leo said, buying time. His eyes scanned the room. The mahogany table, the guild masters, the guards by the doors. His inventory flashed in his mind's eye, iron dagger, first crafted item, lifesteal enchantment skill, unstable enchantment skill level 2, alchemical fusion skill level 2, lifesteal enchantment skill level 1, weather affinity LV, 1, beast roar LV, 1. And the storm core material, still tucked in his pocket from the armor incident. He had no proper tools, but he had his skills, and the storm core was a potent, unstable material. An idea formed, dangerous and desperate. The guild masters were merchants, negotiators. They dealt in words and contracts. What if he crafted something that targeted not flesh, but truth? I'd like to demonstrate a new craft, Leo announced, surprising himself as much as them. To show you the value of my methods. Marcus scoffed. We're not here for a show, boy. This is a business meeting. Indulge him, Valeria said, curiosity flickering in her eyes. I've read the reports. His crafting process is unusual. Leo stepped to a clear space on the marble floor. He withdrew the storm core from his pocket, a fist-sized crystal that crackled with captured lightning, its surface swirling with gray and blue energy. He had no anvil, no hammer, no forge. But he had alchemical fusion level 2 and unstable enchantment level 2. He focused, calling on the skills. The system interface flickered at the edge of his vision, menus scrolling as he initiated the crafting process. "What are you doing?" Theron demanded, but Leo ignored him. He held the storm core in both hands, his injured arm protesting the movement. He channeled alchemical fusion, not to merge materials, but to reshape the core's inherent properties. Storm energy was chaotic, unpredictable, but it could be directed. He layered unstable enchantment over it, not to make it explode, but to make it resonate with emotional frequencies. Truth, he thought. Honesty. The opposite of merchant doublespeak. He poured his will into the crystal, his remaining stamina draining rapidly. Sweat beaded on his forehead, mixing with the grime from the alley ambush. The storm core began to glow, pulses of light radiating outward. It wasn't a weapon in the traditional sense, it was a focus, an amplifier. Leo shaped it into a rough amulet form, using his mind as the hammer and his intent as the anvil. The crystal elongated, a hole forming at the top as if for a chain. Symbols etched themselves across its surface, not runes of power, but glyphs of clarity and revelation. He was crafting blind, without blueprints or recipes, driven solely by instinct and the cheat system's latent potential. "Stop this!" Marcus shouted, rising from his chair. Guards moved forward, hands on their sword hilts. But it was too late. The amulet solidified with a final flash of light. Leo held it up, a pendant of storm-captured crystal, humming with unstable energy. He hadn't planned this, he'd improvised with what he had. And now, he activated it. "This is a truth-seeker amulet," Leo declared, his voice strained. "It doesn't harm. It reveals." He channeled a trickle of mana into the amulet. It pulsed, and a wave of energy expanded outward, invisible but palpable. The guildmasters flinched. Silas took a step back. The energy washed over them, and something shifted in the air. A pressure, a compulsion. Guildmaster Theron opened his mouth, perhaps to order Leo's arrest, but instead he said, "I've been skimming tariffs from the northern caravans for 3 months. The guild's ledgers show 5%, but I take 8. He blinked, his eyes widening in horror. "What, why did I say that?" Valeria's composed mask cracked. "I approved substandard healing potions for the garrison last week. The alchemist paid me a bribe to overlook the diluted essence." She clapped a hand over her mouth, but the words kept coming. "And I've been manipulating auction bids to favor my nephew's trading company." Marcus turned red, sputtering. I've been selling guild protection to smugglers. They move monster parts through the eastern gate, and I look the other way for a cut." He roared in frustration. "What is this witchcraft?" The other merchants and officials in the chamber began speaking too, their voices overlapping in a cacophony of confessions. "I lied about the grain shipment weights, the iron ore was tampered with, I've been embezzling guild funds for a personal villa," the Truth-Seeker amulet's effect spread, unstoppable. It wasn't forcing lies, it was stripping away deception, laying bare the corrupt deals and hidden agendas that underpinned the guild's polished facade. Chaos erupted. Guards who'd moved to seize Leo suddenly turned on each other. "You stole my bonus last month," one yelled. "You've been sleeping with my wife," another accused. Fights broke out, not with weapons, but with shouted truths that cut deeper than blades. The elegant chamber descended into bedlam, merchants scrambling, papers flying, accusations ringing off the marble walls. Leo backed toward the doors, the amulet still glowing in his hand. His stamina was nearly gone, his injuries screaming. He'd crafted an item that exposed truth, and in a den of merchants, truth was the most dangerous weapon of all. But the amulet was unstable. He'd used unstable enchantment level 2 on it, and now the feedback hit him. The crystal pulsed violently, and a backlash of mental energy slammed into Leo's mind. It wasn't physical pain, it was a tearing sensation, as if his thoughts were being unraveled. Visions flashed, the guildmaster's hidden ledgers, secret handshakes, whispered bribes. The weight of their deceptions pressed against his consciousness, threatening to overwhelm him. He staggered, blood trickling from his nose. The amulet was consuming his mental clarity to fuel its revelation. A guard broke free from the confusion, his eyes wild. He drew his sword and charged at Leo. "You did this. You ruined everything." The blade gleamed in the chamber's light, aimed at Leo's chest. Leo had no weapon, no armor. He was injured, exhausted, his mind reeling from the amulet's backlash. But as the guard closed in, Leo did the only thing he could, he thrust the Truth Seeker amulet forward, channeling the last of his mana into it. The crystal flared, and a concentrated beam of truth energy struck the guard. The guard skidded to a halt, his sword dropping from suddenly limp fingers. His face went slack, then contorted with involuntary confession. I killed a merchant last week during a robbery. I framed a rival guild. I've been taking bribes to ignore contraband. He fell to his knees, sobbing. I'm sorry, I'm so sorry. But the amulet's overload was reaching critical. Cracks spiderwebbed across its surface. Leo felt the connection sever, and a final, violent pulse of energy threw him backward. He hit the marble floor hard, his injured shoulder exploding with fresh agony. The world blurred. He saw the guildmasters shouting, guards trying to restore order, Silas staring at him with a mix of fury and fear. Then, the familiar, chilling sensation, the brush of death. The guard's near strike, the mental backlash, the physical impact of the fall. Combined, they pushed him to the edge. His vision darkened at the edges, his heartbeat thudded in his ears. This was it, another near-fatal encounter, this time caused by his own crafted amulet. The system notification flashed, golden text searing across his consciousness. Artisan's reckoning triggered. Near-death experience, Truth Seeker amulet backlash and hostile retaliation. Rewards calculated. Plus 420 EXP. Level 10 Level 11. New skill unlocked, Truth Seeker LV1. New material acquired, Honesty Gem. Cost, moderate mental clarity depletion, increased susceptibility to confusion effects for 24 hours. Leo gasped as energy flooded his system, not healing, but progression. The EXP surged, pushing him to level 11. New knowledge crystallized in his mind, Truth Seeker level 1, a skill that allowed him to sense deception and hidden motives, though using it would drain his mental stamina. And in his inventory, a new material appeared, the Honesty Gem, a smooth, opalescent stone that seemed to reflect light with unsettling clarity. But the cost was immediate. His thoughts felt fuzzy, disjointed. Memories of the guild's confusion swirled with his own pain. He struggled to focus, to remember why he was on the floor. Strong hands grabbed him, guild guards, their faces set in grim lines. Out, one barked. You're banned from the guild hall. Consider the boycott in effect. They dragged him to his feet, ignoring his pained grunt, and hauled him toward the doors. Leo didn't resist. He let them manhandle him out into the street, the Truth Seeker amulet now a dull, cracked stone in his hand. They shoved him onto the cobblestones, and the oak doors slammed shut behind him. The midday sun beat down, too bright, too harsh. He lay there for a moment, gathering his senses. His body hurt, his mind was clouded, but he was alive. And he'd leveled up. He pushed himself up, wincing. The Merchants Guild had made their move, and he'd countered with a truth bomb that exposed their corruption. They'd boycott him, cut off his supplies. But he'd gained a new skill, a new material. The game had escalated. As he limped away from the guild hall, a flicker at the edge of his vision caught his attention. The system interface, usually stable and clear, glitched. For a split second, the golden text wavered, pixels distorting. A message fragment appeared, broken and incoherent, anomaly detected, Artisan's reckoning, protocol violation, then it vanished, replaced by the standard status display. Leo froze, his blood running cold. The glitch was brief, but unmistakable. The system itself was noticing him. Not just guilds or rivals, but the underlying rules of this apocalyptic world. The Artisan's reckoning cheat wasn't just a hidden feature, it was a violation, a glitch that the system might try to correct. And if the system viewed him as an error to be fixed, then his near-death experiments weren't just risky, they were painting a target on his back for forces far beyond merchants and blacksmiths. He looked back at the guild hall, its marble facade gleaming in the sun. The truth had set him free, but it had also drawn a deeper, more dangerous attention. And now, with no suppliers, injured, and mentally depleted, Leo had to find a way to survive not just the guild's boycott, but whatever the system had in store for a crafter who turned near death into infinite power. The morning after the Merchants Guild confrontation, Leo woke with a pounding headache that felt like a blacksmith's hammer striking the inside of his skull. The mental clarity depletion from the Truth Seeker amulet's backlash lingered, thoughts swam through molasses, memories blurred at the edges. He sat up in his workshop's makeshift cot, the Honesty Gem material glowing faintly on his workbench beside the storm core. Both pulsed with dangerous potential. His body ached from the auction ambush, bruised ribs protested every breath, his left arm hung in a sling he'd fashioned from torn cloak fabric, and the deep shoulder laceration throbbed beneath crude bandages. The stolen dragon scale shield and dragon's fury material were gone, along with most of his gold and tools. Goran's thugs had left him with little more than his core skills and the clothes on his back. A sharp knock at Reckoning Forge's door cut through the fog. Leo stumbled to answer, expecting city guards or more Merchants Guild enforcers. Instead, he found a man in royal livery, crimson and gold embroidery on pristine white, the kingdom's crest of a phoenix rising from flames emblazoned on his chest. 2 armored knights flanked him, hands resting on sword hilts. "Leo of Reckoning Forge," the royal messenger asked, his voice crisp with authority. "By order of Prince Valerius, you are summoned to the palace. Immediately." Leo's mind raced through the haze. The prince? Royal commissions meant either unprecedented opportunity or a spectacularly public execution if something went wrong. Given his current streak, probably both. "What does the prince want with a blacksmith?" "A weapon," the messenger said. "The capital is threatened by a rampaging earth elemental that emerged from the northern mines 3 days ago. It has destroyed 2 guard towers and threatens the outer walls. Conventional weapons shatter against its stone hide. The prince has heard rumors about your crafts." Of course he had. The unnatural lightning storm from the Whispering Plate, the dragon's roar at the black market auction, the truth-forcing chaos at the Merchants Guild, Leo's reputation for dangerous, effective weapons had spread faster than plague. He glanced at his inventory: iron dagger, lifesteal enchantment skill, unstable enchantment skill level 2, alchemical fusion skill level 2, lifesteal enchantment skill level 1, weather affinity LV 1, beast roar LV 1, truth seeker LV 1. The storm core and honesty gem materials glowed with untapped power. "I'll need materials," Leo said, his voice rough. "And my workshop tools were stolen." "The royal armory is at your disposal," the messenger replied. "You have 2 hours." The palace forge was a cathedral of craftsmanship, vaulted stone ceilings, 3 massive anvils, forges burning with magical blue flames that required no bellows. Leo moved through the space like a ghost in a dream, the mental fog making every action deliberate, slow. Royal smiths watched him with a mix of curiosity and contempt, their expressions saying what their loyalty-bound mouths couldn't: "Who is this injured upstart the prince trusts with our crisis?" Prince Valerius himself arrived as Leo examined materials. The prince was younger than Leo expected, maybe 20, with sharp features and eyes that missed nothing. He wore practical combat leathers rather than court finery, a long sword at his hip. "The elemental is called Stoneheart," Valerius said without preamble. "It absorbs kinetic energy, the harder you hit it, the stronger it becomes. Arrows bounce off. Swords chip. Mages' fire and lightning only fuse more minerals to its form. It's growing larger with every attack." Leo's mind, struggling through the truth-seeker backlash, latched onto a concept: not force against force, but manipulation. Gravity. If he couldn't break the elemental, perhaps he could make it break itself. "I need the heaviest core material you have," he said. "And something that can alter fundamental forces." The prince gestured to a locked chest. A royal smith opened it to reveal a gravity stone, a rare mineral that pulsed with dark energy, making the air around it feel thick, heavy. "Taken from a meteorite crater," Valerius said. "Our mages say it warps space slightly. We've never found a use for it." Leo's hands trembled as he took the stone. This was it, the perfect, dangerous ingredient. He combined it with the storm core from the Whispering Plate incident, using his alchemical fusion skill level 2. The materials resisted merging, lightning crackling against gravitational pull until Leo forced them together with sheer will. Sweat dripped from his brow onto the anvil. Next came the honesty gem. Truth Seeker LV, 1 skill activated as he touched it, the gem resonated with the concept of unmasking reality. He fused it into the hammer's head, imagining a weapon that wouldn't just hit, but would reveal and exploit structural weaknesses. Unstable enchantment level 2 made the combination volatile, the hammer head glowed with alternating patterns of lightning and dark gravitational waves. For the handle, Leo used petrified oak, wood turned to stone over centuries, symbolizing the intersection of organic and mineral. He carved runes with a borrowed chisel, his injured arms screaming with every strike. Lifesteal enchantment level 1 went into the grip, a safety measure he hoped he wouldn't need. When he finished, the hammer lay on the anvil, gravity's revelation. It was deceptively simple in appearance, a stone head with crystalline inclusions, a dark wooden handle, but the air around it warped, light bending slightly. Tools left too close slid toward it as if down an invisible slope. It manipulates gravity within a limited radius, Leo explained to the prince, fighting to keep his thoughts coherent through the mental fog. Strike the ground near the elemental, and you create a localized gravity well. The elemental's own mass becomes its enemy. The honesty gem component should make it vulnerable to the effect by revealing fault lines in its form. And the cost? Valerius asked, eyeing the unstable energy crackling around the hammer. Leo met his gaze. It's untested. The backlash could be significant. We're out of time, the prince said, hefting the hammer. It seemed to weigh nothing in his hands, then suddenly pulled downward as the gravity field activated briefly. The elemental reaches the walls at dusk. The battle unfolded on the northern plains just outside the capital's walls. Stoneheart was a mountain given life, 30 feet tall, composed of granite, quartz, and raw ore. It moved with tectonic slowness, each step causing tremors that cracked the earth. Where it passed, the ground rose into ridges and fell into chasms, the very landscape reshaping to its will. Royal forces had formed defensive lines, archers firing enchanted arrows that exploded harmlessly against stone, mages weaving earthbinding spells that shattered like glass. Knights charged, their lances breaking on the elemental's legs. With every failed attack, Stoneheart grew larger, absorbing minerals from the ground. Prince Valerius rode forward on a warhorse, gravity's revelation hammer in hand. Leo watched from a hastily erected observation platform, his heart pounding against bruised ribs. This was the moment, his creation in another's hands, about to trigger chaos that would either save a city or destroy it. The prince dismounted 50 yards from the elemental. He raised the hammer, and Leo felt the unstable enchantment activate, a psychic ripple that made his teeth ache. Valerius brought the hammer down not on Stoneheart, but on the ground between them. The effect was instantaneous and catastrophic. A sphere of distorted gravity erupted from the impact point. The ground within a 20-yard radius compressed downward, creating a sudden crater. Stoneheart, caught at the edge, lurched as its left side became impossibly heavy. The elemental roared, a sound like grinding continents, as cracks appeared in its stone hide. The honesty gem component worked perfectly, revealing weaknesses where gravitational stress concentrated. But the backlash began immediately. The gravity well didn't dissipate. It intensified, pulling everything toward its center. Loose rocks, discarded weapons, even two unfortunate knights who'd been too close, all slid into the growing crater. The ground trembled not from the elemental's movement, but from the hammer's uncontrolled effect. Valerius struck again, aiming closer to Stoneheart. Another gravity well opened, overlapping the first. The elemental staggered, its massive form cracking under its own multiplied weight. Chunks of stone sheared away, revealing a glowing core of molten earth, its heart. Then the hammer's instability reached critical mass. Lightning from the storm core component erupted, forking across the battlefield. Gravitational waves pulsed outward, knocking soldiers off their feet. The observation platform where Leo stood shuddered, then collapsed as the ground beneath it suddenly became as dense as lead. Leo fell 10 feet into rubble. Stone and wood crashed around him. A support beam slammed into his already injured shoulder, and he screamed as fresh pain obliterated thought. Darkness threatened at the edges of his vision. He was buried, not completely, but pinned, debris weighing down his chest, making each breath a struggle against crushing pressure. This was it. Near-fatal encounter caused by his own creation. He could feel Artisan's reckoning hovering at the edge of awareness, waiting to see if he'd survive. Above, the battle continued. Valerius, realizing the hammer was becoming too dangerous to use, made a final desperate charge. He leaped into the overlapping gravity wells, the hammer pulling him toward Stoneheart with unnatural speed. With a cry that echoed across the plain, he struck the elemental's exposed heart. The explosion of released energy threw everyone back. Stoneheart shattered into 1,000 fragments, the glow fading from its core. The gravity wells collapsed abruptly, releasing their hold on the battlefield. For Leo, buried in rubble, the sudden release was almost as dangerous as the compression. The debris shifted, stones grinding against his bruised ribs. He tasted blood, his own, from bitten lips. With his good arm, he pushed against a timber. It didn't move. His injured arm was trapped beneath something heavy. The mental fog from the truth-seeker backlash combined with oxygen deprivation, making the world swim. No. Not like this. Not buried alive by his own weapon's aftermath. He activated Lifesteal Enchantment Level 1 through sheer instinct, directing it not at a living creature but at the earth itself, a desperate, probably useless attempt. But the skill connected to something. The residual energy from the shattered elemental, perhaps, or the fading gravitational magic. A trickle of vitality flowed into him, just enough to clear his head for one final effort. Leo braced his feet against solid ground beneath the rubble. He pushed with everything he had, legs straining, good arm trembling, injured shoulder screaming in protest. Stone scraped against stone. The debris shifted, then gave way. He crawled upward, dragging himself through broken wood and shattered rock, each movement agony. His head broke the surface. Air, sweet, dusty, battle-scarred air, filled his lungs. He pulled himself completely free and collapsed onto what remained of the observation platform's floor. Artisan's reckoning, triggered. The system notification burned behind his eyes, sharper and more urgent than ever before. Near-fatal encounter survived, gravity's revelation backlash, burial under rubble, crushed chest, oxygen deprivation. Reward calculating. Plus 450 EXP. Level 11-12. Material acquired, elemental heart, legendary. Skill unlocked, gravity control LV-1. Cost, severe bruises, chest, limbs, re-injured shoulder laceration, stamina depletion to 15%. The experience washed through him, healing some of the damage but leaving deep bruises that would purple by morning. The elemental heart material appeared in his inventory, a crystalline core that pulsed with Terra energy. Gravity control LV-1 settled into his skill set, a new understanding of mass and attraction humming at the edge of his consciousness. But the cost was real. Every muscle screamed. His shoulder bled through the bandages. He could barely lift his head. Prince Valerius approached, gravity's revelation hammer smoking slightly in his hand. The weapon had survived, though dark cracks now webbed its head. It worked, the prince said, his voice filled with awe and residual adrenaline. The elemental is destroyed. The capital is safe. He offered a hand to help Leo up. Leo tried to rise. His legs buckled. The world tilted, colors bleeding together, the gray of shattered stone, the red of sunset, the darkening blue of evening sky. The mental fog from the truth-seeker backlash, combined with the new exhaustion from Artisan's reckoning's cost, became a tidal wave overwhelming his consciousness. He collapsed. As darkness took him, his final sight wasn't the prince's concerned face or the victorious army, but a system notification that glitched violently in his vision, text fragmenting and reforming. Artisan's reckoning anomaly detected. Frequency, critical. Power growth rate, deviation 487% from expected parameters. Investigation imminent. Error. Error. Prepare for audit. Then nothing. The morning after Prince Valerius's victory over the Earth Elemental, Leo's body screamed in protest with every movement. His shoulder throbbed with a deep, persistent ache from the auction wound, now aggravated by the rubble collapse. Bruises painted his torso in shades of purple and yellow, and his stamina hovered at a dangerous low, making even the simple act of lighting his forge's fire feel like a monumental task. The mental fog from the Truth-Seeker amulet's backlash had mostly cleared, but a lingering susceptibility to confusion remained, like a thin veil over his thoughts. He stood in the dim light of his shop, Reckoning Forge, its shelves half empty after the Merchants Guild's boycott had cut off his regular suppliers. The tools stolen by Goran's thugs left gaps in his workspace, forcing him to improvise with what remained. On his workbench lay the elemental heart material gained from the prince's battle, a pulsating stone that glowed with earthy browns and crystalline greens, humming with residual power. His inventory was sparse now, the lifesteal enchantment skill, unstable enchantment skill level 2, alchemical fusion skill level 2, lifesteal enchantment skill level 1, weather affinity LV1, beast roar LV1, truth seeker LV1, and the newly acquired gravity control LV1. No rare materials beyond the elemental heart remained after the thefts and uses. As Leo gingerly tested his injured arm, a chill swept through the shop. The air grew still, then cold, as if winter had crept in through the cracks in the walls. Two figures materialized in the center of the room without sound or warning, their arrival marked only by a subtle shift in the light. They wore pristine white robes that seemed to absorb rather than reflect illumination, flowing like liquid silk. Their faces were obscured by featureless silver masks that showed no eyes, no mouths, only smooth, polished surfaces. An aura of absolute authority radiated from them, pressing down on Leo's senses. Leo, crafter of the Reckoning Forge, the one on the left spoke, its voice a monotone echo that seemed to come from everywhere at once. You have been identified as an anomaly within the system. Your class, Novice Blacksmith, is operating outside designated parameters through an exploit designated, Artisan's Reckoning, The other enforcer took a step forward, the floorboards not creaking under its weight. This glitch destabilizes the balance of power progression. By decree of the system overseers, you are to cease all crafting activities immediately. Your skills will be reset to baseline, and any materials gained through illicit means will be confiscated. Leo's heart hammered against his bruised ribs. These were the system enforcers, the ultimate threat hinted at in the glitching notifications. His mind raced, the truth seeker LV, one skill tingling at the edges of his perception, sensing the absolute conviction in their words. They weren't lying, they truly believed he was a malfunction to be corrected. Panic threatened to rise, but he forced it down, his blacksmith's instincts taking over. He couldn't fight them directly, not in his current state, with depleted stamina and injuries. But he could craft. You want me to stop? Leo said, his voice rough from exhaustion. Then you'll have to survive what I make next. He moved to his workbench, his movements slow and pained but deliberate. The enforcers watched, unmoving, as if observing a bug's futile struggle. Leo gathered what he had, scraps of polished steel from a broken shield frame, the elemental heart, and his remaining tools. His mind worked through combinations. He needed something defensive, something that could turn their power against them. The gravity control LV, one skill whispered possibilities, manipulating force, redirecting energy. The unstable enchantment LV, 2 skill promised volatility, and the alchemical fusion LV, 2 skill could bind it all together. With trembling hands, he began. He heated the steel in his forge, the flames licking at the metal as he shaped it into a circular shield, about 2 feet in diameter. Sweat beaded on his brow, each hammer strike sending jolts of pain through his shoulder. He infused the steel with the elemental heart, using alchemical fusion to merge the earthy resilience with the metal structure. The shield took on a faint, shimmering quality, veins of green and brown running through it like petrified wood. Next, he engraved intricate runes along the rim, channeling his unstable enchantment skill. These weren't for strengthening or protection, they were designed to amplify and reflect, to create a feedback loop of energy. He poured his remaining stamina into the work, his vision blurring at the edges. The enforcers remained patient, their silence more threatening than any demand. Crafting complete, mirror shield, Leo muttered, hefting the finished product. It was heavier than it looked, the surface now a polished, almost liquid silver that seemed to drink in the room's light. He could feel the unstable energy humming within it, a dormant storm waiting to be unleashed. The enforcer on the right raised a hand. Noncompliance detected. Initiating purification protocol. Beams of pure, blinding white light erupted from its fingertips, not hot but cold, antiseptic, carrying an aura of erasure. They lanced toward Leo, aimed not to kill but to dissolve, to wipe his skills and memories clean. Leo didn't try to run, he knew he couldn't outpace that light. Instead, he raised the mirror shield, angling it with every ounce of his gravity control LV, one skill, feeling the subtle pull of forces as he adjusted the shield's position. The beam struck the polished surface. For a heartbeat, nothing happened. Then the shield absorbed the energy, the runes along its rim flaring to life with a violent, electric blue. The unstable enchantment took hold, amplifying the purification beams, twisting them, reflecting them back at the enforcers, but not perfectly. A fraction of the energy splintered off, arcing toward Leo in a jagged bolt of amplified white lightning. Time seemed to slow. Leo threw himself sideways, his injured body screaming in protest. The bolt grazed his side, searing through his tunic and skin with a cold burn that felt like being dipped in liquid nitrogen. Agony exploded through his nerves, a surge of pain so intense it blinded him for a second. He hit the floor hard, the impact jarring his bruised ribs and sending fresh waves of nausea through him. But he was alive. The bolt hadn't hit him directly. The near miss, the brush with erasure, triggered the familiar, terrifying rush of Artisan's Reckoning. Artisan's Reckoning activated. Near fatal encounter with own crafted item, mirror shield. EXP gained, plus 480. Level up, 1213. Skill unlocked, Reflection Mastery LV, 1. Material acquired, Pure Light Shard. Cost, Severe Pain Surge, minor nerve damage to left side, stamina depletion to 5%. Leo gasped, clutching his side where the cold burn throbbed. New knowledge flooded his mind, how to better control reflections, how to fine-tune angles and amplifications. In his hand, a small, crystalline shard appeared, glowing with the same pure white light as the enforcer's beams, but now inert, a material he could use. His stamina bottomed out, leaving him trembling and weak on the floor. The enforcers had been forced back a step by their own reflected beams, their white robes singed at the edges. They showed no emotion, but their posture shifted slightly, a hint of reassessment. Anomaly resilience exceeds projections, the left one stated. The glitch is self-reinforcing. The right enforcer looked down at Leo. This is not over, Leo. The system will recalibrate. A final reckoning approaches, one you cannot craft your way out of. Cease your activities, or face total erasure. With that, they dissolved into particles of light, fading from the shop as silently as they had arrived. The cold lifted, replaced by the normal warmth of the forge's dying embers. Leo lay on the floor for long minutes, breathing through the pain, his mind reeling. They were gone for now, but they'd be back. And total erasure didn't sound like something he could survive, even with Artisan's reckoning. As he slowly, painfully pushed himself up, something caught his eye. Behind his workbench, where the enforcers had stood, a section of the wall had cracked open, revealing a hidden compartment he'd never noticed before. Inside, covered in dust, lay an ancient, leather-bound book. Its cover was embossed with fading symbols, a hammer striking an anvil, surrounded by swirling cosmic patterns. Curiosity overcoming his agony, Leo crawled over and pulled it out. The pages were brittle, written in a script that somehow translated in his mind, as if the system itself was allowing him to read it. The title page read, Prophecies of the World-Forging Blacksmith. He flipped through, his eyes widening. The text spoke of a crafter who would rise in a time of system collapse, one whose power grew not from safe progression, but from surviving the brink of death brought by their own creations. It described Artisan's reckoning, not as a glitch, but as a hidden, intended path, a way to transcend classes and reshape reality itself. The final pages hinted at a confrontation with the system's core, a battle where the blacksmith would either be erased or become something more. Leo's hands shook as he closed the book. This changed everything. He wasn't just an anomaly, he was part of something ancient, something prophesied. But with the system's enforcer's warning of a final reckoning, and his body pushed to its limits, the path ahead felt more dangerous than ever. He had to craft smarter, riskier, and survive long enough to uncover the truth, before the system decided to delete him for good. The ancient text lay open on Leo's workbench, its pages brittle and yellowed like autumn leaves preserved in time. Dust motes danced in the slanted morning light that cut through the shop's single window, illuminating the strange glyphs and diagrams that covered the parchment. Leo's fingers traced the lines carefully, his left side still tingling with the ghost of nerve damage from yesterday's confrontation with the system enforcers. Every movement sent sharp reminders through his shoulder. The old injury from the earth elemental battle had never fully healed, and the recent strain had reopened something deep within the muscle. He read aloud, his voice a raspy whisper in the quiet forge. Prophecies of the World-Forging Blacksmith. The text told a story older than the system apocalypse, older than the merging of worlds. It spoke of an ancient civilization that had mastered reality itself through craftsmanship, creating not just weapons and armor, but altering the very fabric of existence. Their greatest achievement was the Artisan's reckoning system, a method of growth that required the creator to face the consequences of their own creations, to dance on the edge of destruction and emerge stronger. But the power proved too dangerous, Leo murmured, turning the page. The ink here was darker, as if written with urgency. The system was sealed away, its knowledge fragmented, its practitioners hunted. His heart hammered against his ribs. This wasn't just some cheat he'd stumbled upon, it was a legacy. A forbidden one. The system enforcers weren't just cleaning up glitches, they were maintaining a seal on something that could change everything. A diagram caught his eye, a key-shaped artifact, intricately detailed with swirling patterns that seemed to shift when he looked at them too long. The caption read, Key to the First Forge, crafted from purified light and will. Leo's eyes flicked to the pure light shard he'd acquired yesterday. It sat on his workbench, glowing with a soft, steady radiance that seemed to pulse in time with his heartbeat. The text specified that only this material, combined with the crafter's own life force, could create the key that would unlock the hidden dungeon where the original forge lay dormant. Temporary weakness, he read the warning again. The key drains the creator's vitality during activation. Many aspirants perished at this threshold. He almost laughed. After surviving collapsing platforms, reflected purification beams, and berserk adventurers, what was a little life force drain? But his body protested the thought. His stamina still hovered around 5%, and the nerve damage made his left hand tremble when he tried to grip anything too tightly. The mental clarity depletion from the Truth Seeker amulet incident had mostly faded, but a persistent fog lingered at the edges of his consciousness, making complex thoughts slip away like water through fingers. No time to wait for recovery. The enforcers had warned of a final reckoning. They would be back, and next time they wouldn't just demand he stop crafting, they'd erase him entirely. Leo gathered his materials, the pure light shard, a chunk of refined iron for structure, and a vial of his own blood, drawn carefully from a finger prick, each drop shimmering with the faint golden glow of his artisan's reckoning energy. He activated his skills one by one, feeling them settle into place like well-worn tools. Alchemical fusion level 2 hummed to life first, the energy wrapping around the materials and beginning the process of merging their essences. The pure light shard resisted at first, its radiance flaring bright enough to leave afterimages on Leo's vision. But he pushed through, channeling unstable enchantment level 2 to introduce controlled chaos into the mixture. The light shard fractured into 1,000 glittering fragments, then reformed around the iron core in the shape of the key from the diagram. Gravity control level 1 helped stabilize the process, creating a subtle field that kept the volatile energies from exploding outward. Reflection mastery level 1 came next. Leo used it to bounce stray light particles back into the mix, ensuring no energy was wasted. But the final step required something more personal. Life force infusion, he read from the text. The creator must pour their vitality into the key, making it a living extension of their will. Leo placed his hands on either side of the half-formed key. The glow from the pure light shard intensified, burning through his skin and into his bones. He took a deep breath and began to push. At first, it felt like donating blood, a slight dizziness, a warmth spreading from his core outward. Then the sensation deepened. His heartbeat slowed. His breathing became shallow. The shop around him seemed to dim, colors leaching away until everything was washed in shades of gray. Only the key remained bright, drinking his vitality like a parched desert drinks rain. Memories flashed behind his eyes, his first iron dagger, the hunter who'd used it against a monster. Kale going berserk with the rage-imbued sword. Sir Alistair's terrified face as lightning tore through the autumn parade. Prince Valerius shattering the earth elemental with gravity wells. Each near-death experience played out in rapid succession, and with each one, the key glowed brighter. His stamina plummeted. 4%. 3%. 2%. A system notification flickered at the edge of his vision, glitching and distorting. Warning, life force critical. Cease infusion immediately or risk permanent cessation. Leo gritted his teeth. Not yet. The key was almost complete. He could see the final details forming, intricate filigree along the shaft, a complex locking mechanism at the head. But his body was failing. Black spots danced in his vision. His knees buckled, and he caught himself on the workbench, knuckles white against the wood. 1%. Then 0%. For a terrifying moment, everything went dark and silent. No heartbeat. No breath. Just emptiness. Then the key flashed with blinding white light, and Leo gasped as air rushed back into his lungs. The artisan's reckoning triggered, flooding his system with energy so intense it felt like being struck by lightning. Artisan's reckoning activated. Near-death experience confirmed, life force depletion to 0.1%. Reward calculating. Plus 500 EXP gained. Level 1314. New skill unlocked, reality weaving level 1. New material acquired, prophecy fragment. Cost applied, temporary weakness, strength, agility, and mental acuity reduced by 60% for 48 hours. Leo collapsed to the floor, the newly forged key clattering beside him. It was beautiful, about 6 inches long, made of what appeared to be solidified light with veins of gold running through it. Warm to the touch, and humming with a power that resonated with something deep in his chest. The prophecy fragment materialized next to it, a shard of obsidian black stone with silver script etched across its surface in a language Leo somehow understood without translation. It told of the first forge, a place where reality itself could be hammered into new shapes. And it gave directions. Leo forced himself to his feet, using the workbench for support. Every muscle screamed in protest. His vision swam. But he had the key, and he knew where to go. The hidden dungeon entrance was exactly where the prophecy fragment said it would be, behind a waterfall on the eastern cliffs, concealed by an illusion so perfect that even when Leo stood right in front of it, he saw only solid rock. Only when he raised the key did the illusion shimmer and dissolve, revealing a stone archway carved with the same glyphs from the ancient text. Leo inserted the key into a depression at the arch's center. It fit perfectly, turning with a sound like grinding mountains. The archway glowed, and a portal of swirling light opened before him. He stepped through. The transition was instantaneous. One moment he was in a damp cave behind the waterfall, the next he stood in a cavern so vast its ceiling was lost in darkness. And in the center of that cavern stood the forge. It wasn't like any forge Leo had ever seen. No anvil, no bellows, no fire pit. Instead, there was a platform of polished black stone, floating several feet above the ground without visible support. Above it hung what looked like a miniature galaxy, a swirling mass of stars and nebulae contained within a sphere of crystal-clear energy. Tools lay arranged on stone tables around the platform, hammers that seemed to be made of condensed light, tongs that shifted between solid and liquid states, chisels that sang with harmonic frequencies when he looked at them. This was the first forge. The place where the original Artisan's reckoning users had worked. Leo approached slowly, his temporary weakness making each step a struggle. The air here tasted different, charged with potential, thick with the scent of ozone and something else, something ancient and powerful. He reached out to touch one of the floating tools, but before his fingers could make contact, a voice echoed through the cavern. Leo, the blacksmith. You have trespassed where you do not belong. He turned. The two system enforcers stood at the entrance he'd just come through, their white robes glowing in the cavern's dim light. But they weren't alone this time. With them stood a third figure, taller, with robes of deep crimson instead of white, and a face that seemed to shift and change whenever Leo tried to focus on it. The glitch corrector, the lead enforcer said, gesturing to the crimson-robed figure. Sent to erase anomalies that threaten system stability. The glitch corrector stepped forward, and the air grew cold. The Artisan's reckoning was sealed for a reason. Its users grew too powerful, began reshaping reality to their whims. They threatened the balance of all existence. I'm not trying to reshape reality, Leo said, his voice steadier than he felt. I'm just trying to survive. Your survival is the threat, the glitch corrector replied. Every time you trigger the reckoning, you weaken the seals. Every level you gain brings the old system closer to resurgence. You must be erased before you unlock its full potential. The enforcers raised their hands, purification beams gathering at their fingertips. But the glitch corrector stopped them with a gesture. No. This place, it resonates with his power. Direct attacks may be reflected or amplified, as before. The shifting face turned toward Leo. But there are other ways to erase a glitch. The glitch corrector raised both hands, and the cavern itself seemed to respond. The floating forge platform shuddered. The miniature galaxy above it dimmed. And Leo felt something pulling at him, not at his body, but at his very existence. As if reality itself was trying to unright him. He stumbled back, the temporary weakness making his movements sluggish. His mind raced through his available skills. Gravity control could maybe create a defensive field. Reflection mastery might bounce back whatever the glitch corrector was doing. But reality weaving level 1. He hadn't even tried it yet. Didn't know what it could do. The prophecy fragment in his pocket grew warm. The first forge responds to will, he remembered from the text. To reshape reality, one must first understand that reality is already shaped. He didn't fully understand what that meant. But he had one advantage, this place was connected to Artisan's reckoning. His power. Leo reached for the floating platform, not with his hands, but with his will. He channeled every ounce of energy he had left, pushing through the weakness, through the pain, through the fear. The platform glowed. The glitch corrector's eyes, or what passed for eyes in that shifting face, widened. You dare. I'm a blacksmith, Leo said through gritted teeth. This is a forge. Seems appropriate. He poured his will into the platform, and for the first time, he felt what reality weaving level 1 could do. Not create something from nothing. Not destroy what already existed. But, tweak. Adjust. Like finding the weak point in a piece of metal and applying just the right amount of pressure to change its shape without breaking it. He focused on the space between himself and the glitch corrector, and he wove. The air thickened, becoming syrupy and resistant. The enforcer's purification beams, which they'd begun charging again, spluttered and died as the energy couldn't travel through the altered reality. The glitch corrector's unwriting pull weakened, diluted by the changes Leo had made. But the effort was immense. Sweat poured down Leo's face. His vision tunneled. The 60% weakness felt like 90%, like 95%, like he was trying to lift a mountain with noodle arms. Impressive, the glitch corrector said, and for the first time, there was something other than cold efficiency in that voice. Something that might have been respect. For a novice. But you cannot sustain this. The glitch corrector raised a hand, and the cavern's walls began to glow with system glyphs, containment seals, reactivated after millennia of dormancy. The forge will be resealed, the glitch corrector declared. And you will be erased within it. A fitting end for a glitch that should never have existed. The glyphs brightened, and Leo felt the platform's connection to him begin to sever. His reality weaving faltered. The temporary weakness crashed over him like a wave, and his knees gave out completely this time. As he fell, his hand closed around the prophecy fragment in his pocket. The silver script glowed through the obsidian stone, and a single line burned itself into his mind. The world-forging blacksmith does not bend reality to his will. He understands that his will is already part of reality, and acts accordingly. Leo didn't have time to ponder the philosophy. The containment seals were almost complete. The enforcers were advancing. The glitch corrector was gathering energy for a final, unstoppable erasure. He had one chance. One desperate, probably suicidal chance. He looked at the floating forge platform, at the miniature galaxy above it, at the tools of light and song. Then he looked at the glitch corrector and the enforcers. And he made a decision. The walls of the first forge groaned like a dying beast as reality itself began to fold inward. Leo stumbled backward, his body screaming with every movement. The 60% weakness from forging the key had settled into his bones like lead weights, making each breath a laborious effort. Before him, the three system enforcers stood in a triangular formation, their white robes shimmering with geometric patterns of light. The new entity, the glitch corrector, floated at their center, its form shifting between humanoid and pure energy, a living algorithm designed to erase anomalies. Target identified, Leo, class, blacksmith, anomaly, artisan's reckoning, the glitch corrector intoned, its voice a chorus of mechanical clicks and static. Initiating final containment protocol. This space will be sealed in 30 seconds. Leo's eyes darted around the ancient forge. The chamber was vast, with walls of obsidian stone carved with runes that pulsed with a faint blue glow. At its heart stood the first forge itself, a massive anvil of blackened metal, surrounded by workbenches holding tools that seemed to shift and whisper. The air hummed with latent power, the residue of a civilization that had once bent reality to its will. But there was no time to marvel. The enforcers raised their hands, beams of white light coalescing into spheres of purifying energy. Think, Leo commanded himself, his mind foggy from the weakness penalty. His inventory flashed in his vision, iron dagger, elemental heart, pure light shard, prophecy fragment. His skills, alchemical fusion LV2, unstable enchantment LV2, lifesteal enchantment LV1, weather affinity LV1, beast roar LV1, truth seeker LV1, gravity control LV1, reflection mastery LV1, reality weaving LV1. He had one chance, craft something that could counter their attacks, something born from every near-death he'd survived. 20 seconds, the glitch corrector announced. Leo lunged for the first forge, his movements sluggish. He dumped his materials onto the anvil, the elemental heart, a crystalline core that pulsed with earth and storm energies, the pure light shard, a fragment of reflected purification, the prophecy fragment, a shard of ancient text that whispered of destiny. His hands trembled as he activated alchemical fusion LV2, the skills flowing through him like electric currents. The materials began to merge, but the process was unstable from the start. Waves of energy erupted from the anvil, slamming into Leo's chest. He gasped, feeling ribs crack under the impact, his stamina, already at 5%, draining further. 15 seconds. The enforcers fired their beams. Leo didn't have time to dodge. Instinctively, he activated Reflection Mastery LV1, using a nearby polished metal shield from the workbench to deflect the attack. The beams ricocheted, but a splinter of energy grazed his left arm, searing through flesh and nerve. Pain exploded through his system, white-hot and blinding. He screamed, but his hands kept moving, pouring unstable enchantment LV2 into the forging. The materials on the anvil began to take shape, a sword, its form wavering between solid and ethereal. 10 seconds. Sealing imminent. Leo's vision blurred. He remembered every brush with death, Kale's berserk rage, Brand's skeleton horde, the prince's gravity backlash, the enforcer's purification. Each memory fueled his crafting, channeled through reality weaving LV1. The sword glowed with a chaotic light, swirls of earth brown, storm gray, pure white and prophetic gold. But the energy emissions grew more violent. A wave of force erupted, tearing at Leo's body. He felt skin peel back, bones vibrate, his very essence threatening to unravel. This was beyond near death, this was disintegration. 5 seconds. Leo roared, activating every skill at once. Gravity Control LV-1 to anchor himself, Lifesteal Enchantment LV-1 to siphon energy from the forge itself, Truth Seeker LV-1 to see through the chaos. The sword solidified, its blade reflecting his own battered face. But the cost was catastrophic. Energy waves pulsed outward, disintegrating the stone floor around him. Leo's body convulsed, blood pouring from his nose and ears, his muscles tearing under the strain. He was moments from being erased, not by the enforcers, but by his own creation. Then, a notification flashed in his mind, golden and urgent. Artisan's Reckoning triggered, survival threshold reached. EXP gained, plus 550. Level up, 1415. Skill unlocked, Death-defying Craft LV Max. Material acquired, Apocalypse Ore. Leo gasped as new power flooded him. Death-defying Craft LV Max, a skill that burned through his reserves but granted absolute precision in life-threatening crafting. His stamina, already depleted, hit zero, but the skill kept him moving, a puppet on strings of willpower. He grabbed the Apocalypse Ore from the notification, a chunk of black metal that seemed to drink the light around it, and fused it into the sword using Alchemical Fusion LV-2. The blade darkened, absorbing the chaotic energies, stabilizing into a weapon of terrifying beauty. But the forge was sealing. The walls shimmered, reality folding like paper. The glitch corrector and enforcers prepared a combined attack, their beams merging into a single pillar of white light aimed at Leo. He lifted the sword, its weight immense. It glowed with unstable power, pulsing with the near-deaths he'd endured, the materials he'd sacrificed, the prophecy he embodied. As he raised it, he felt a cold realization, using this sword might not just defeat the enforcers, it might unravel him completely, burning through his last reserves of life force. The blade hummed, ready to be swung, as the combined attack descended toward him. The sword hummed in Leo's hands, a vibration that traveled up his arms and rattled his already cracked ribs. Apocalypse Ore, the name felt like a prophecy in itself, and the blade it formed was a thing of terrifying beauty. It shimmered with unstable energy, its edge not steel but a fracture in reality itself, bleeding prismatic light that warped the air around it. Across the chamber, the system enforcers stood unmoving, their white robes pristine despite the dust and debris of the first forge. The glitch corrector floated between them, a featureless entity of shifting data streams that pulsed with cold, mechanical intent. Termination protocol activated, the glitch corrector intoned, its voice devoid of emotion. Anomaly Leo, Class, Novice Blacksmith, Cheat System, Artisan's Reckoning. Designation, Reality Corrupting Glitch. Erasure in progress. Leo's body screamed in protest. Every breath was a knife twist in his chest, his left side numb from nerve damage, his stamina utterly depleted. He could feel the warm trickle of blood from his nose, the metallic taste on his tongue. But his grip on the sword tightened. This was it, the ultimate test of his broken class. He had forged a weapon that might kill him, and now he had to wield it against the very system that wanted him dead. He didn't wait for them to strike first. With a roar that tore from his raw throat, Leo lunged, the Apocalypse sword cutting through the air. It didn't swing so much as it unraveled space, leaving a trail of shimmering distortion in its wake. The enforcers moved in perfect sync, raising their hands. Beams of pure white energy, purification beams, far more concentrated than before, erupted toward him. The clash was cataclysmic. When sword met beam, reality itself buckled. The chamber didn't shake, it fractured. Jagged lines of light spiderwebbed through the air, and the very stone of the walls seemed to pixelate and dissolve into static. Leo felt the impact reverberate through his bones, a shockwave that threatened to shatter what little remained of his health. He was thrown back, skidding across the rough floor, but he held on to the sword, his knuckles white. Damage sustained, 15%, his system interface flashed, the numbers blurry in his vision. But beneath the pain, something else stirred, the familiar, terrifying thrill of Artisan's Reckoning, waiting on the edge of death. He pushed himself up, using the sword as a crutch. The enforcers advanced, their movements fluid and inhuman. One fired another beam, Leo parried with the flat of the blade. The energy didn't deflect, it splintered, fracturing into a dozen smaller rays that carved gouges in the floor and ceiling. One grazed his shoulder, searing through leather and flesh. He hissed, stumbling, but his mind was racing. The sword wasn't just a weapon, it was a catalyst amplifying every interaction into a reality-warping event. He remembered his skills: Reflection Mastery LV-1, Reality Weaving LV-1, Death-Defying Craft LV-Max. They weren't just for forging anymore. As the second enforcer lunged, hands glowing with containment fields, Leo didn't dodge. He met the attack head-on, channeling reality weaving through the sword. The result was a spatial rift. Where the blade met the enforcer's energy, space tore open like a wound. A vortex of swirling colors and distorted geometry yawned into existence, sucking in light and sound. Leo felt the pull, a gravitational force that threatened to drag him into the void. He planted his feet, muscles straining against the tide, but the enforcer wasn't so lucky. With a soundless scream, it was ripped from its feet and consumed by the rift, its data stream body dissolving into fragments before vanishing entirely. But the rift didn't close. It pulsed, growing larger, tendrils of unstable energy lashing out like whips. One lashed toward Leo's head, he ducked, feeling the air above him tear apart. Another snaked toward his legs, he leaped backward, his injured body protesting with every movement. Inches, that was all that separated him from being swallowed by the very chaos he had unleashed. And in that moment of near annihilation, Artisan's reckoning triggered. A surge of power, familiar and agonizing, flooded his system. It wasn't the gentle flow of experience points, it was a torrent, a white-hot river of energy that seared through his nerves and exploded behind his eyes. The world blurred, colors bleeding into one another, sounds distorting into a deafening roar. He felt his consciousness teetering on the brink, the rift's pull mingling with the system's reward. Artisan's reckoning activated. Plus 520 EXP gained. Level 1516. Skill unlocked, System Override LV-1. Material acquired, Reality Shard. The notifications burned in his vision, but the cost was immediate. A headache, unlike anything he'd ever experienced, slammed into his skull. It wasn't pain, it was disintegration, as if his thoughts were being shredded by static. His vision swam, the chamber doubling and tripling, the rift blurring into a smear of light. He tasted copper and ozone, his balance failing. For a second, he thought he would pass out, consumed by the backlash. But death-defying craft held him together. Max level, it wasn't just a skill, it was a reflex, an instinct honed by countless near-death experiences. His body moved on its own, stumbling away from the rift's edge as it began to collapse in on itself, sealing with a sound like shattering glass. He fell to his knees, gasping, the apocalypse sword clattering beside him. The headache receded to a dull, throbbing ache, but his vision remained hazy, the world seen through a fogged lens. One enforcer was gone. But the other remained, and the glitch corrector pulsed with renewed intensity. Anomaly escalation detected, the glitch corrector stated, its data streams accelerating. Implementing final countermeasure, system merge protocol. Before Leo could react, the remaining enforcer stepped forward, not toward him, but toward the glitch corrector. It didn't resist as the entity's data streams enveloped it, weaving through its robes and into its form. Light erupted, a blinding, pure white radiance that forced Leo to shield his eyes. When it faded, the enforcer was gone. In its place stood something new. A colossal entity, 20 feet tall, composed of swirling light and cascading data streams. It had no distinct features, only a humanoid shape that flickered with lines of code and geometric patterns. Its presence filled the chamber, pressing down on Leo with tangible weight. The air grew cold, charged with static, and the very laws of physics seemed to waver in its vicinity. "I am the will of the system," it spoke, its voice a chorus of 1,000 mechanical tones, echoing from everywhere and nowhere. "You are in error, Leo. A flaw in the code of reality. Your artisan's reckoning is a remnant of a forgotten age, a power that should have been erased. Your existence threatens the stability of this world. You must be corrected." Leo stared up at the entity, his breath coming in ragged gasps. His body was broken, his stamina non-existent, his vision blurred. But in his hand, the apocalypse sword still hummed, and in his mind, a new skill glowed, System Override LV-1. He didn't know what it did, but the name felt like a promise. He pushed himself to his feet, swaying but standing. The sword felt heavier now, as if infused with the weight of the battle to come. The entity raised a hand, and reality itself seemed to bend toward it, preparing to enforce its will. Leo grinned, blood staining his teeth. "Come on then," he whispered, hoarse but defiant. "Let's see if your system can handle a little chaos." The chamber held its breath, poised on the edge of annihilation. The will of the system loomed before Leo, a colossal entity of shimmering light and cascading data streams that filled the ancient first forge. Its form shifted constantly, sometimes a humanoid giant with featureless face, sometimes a geometric pattern of intersecting planes, sometimes pure energy that made the air crackle with systemic authority. Every pulse of its presence made the very stone walls of the forge vibrate, as if reality itself acknowledged this was its master. Error detected, Artisan's reckoning protocol, the entity boomed, its voice not sound but direct vibration in Leo's mind. User Leo, class, Novice Blacksmith, corrupted data stream. Initiating correction sequence. Leo stood panting, the apocalypse sword trembling in his grip. His body screamed with injuries, cracked ribs grinding with each breath, nerve damage making his fingers twitch uncontrollably, internal bleeding that painted his vision with red spots. The system override LV, one skill he'd just unlocked hummed in his consciousness, a foreign presence that felt like trying to grasp water with bare hands. He could sense the system's architecture now, layers upon layers of code governing reality, classes, progression, but understanding it was another matter. Correction. Leo spat blood onto the forge floor. The metallic taste mixed with the scent of ozone from the spatial rift still flickering around the chamber. You mean deletion? The will didn't answer with words. Instead, it raised a hand of pure light, and the air solidified around Leo. Pressure mounted, not physical, but existential. His very class designation, Novice Blacksmith, flickered in his status window, threatening to dissolve. The system was trying to unmake him at the most fundamental level. Leo's mind raced through options. The apocalypse sword could warp reality, but against the literal will of the system. He'd seen it create spatial rifts, but this entity was space, was system, was the framework holding this merged world together. Fighting it with conventional means, even unconventional ones like reality-warping swords, was like trying to flood an ocean with a bucket. Then he remembered the prophecy fragments. The ancient civilization that could reshape reality. Their sealed system, Artisan's reckoning, wasn't just a cheat. It was a key. And keys didn't fight locks, they turned them. If you're going to erase me, Leo whispered, blood trickling from his nose, I'll make sure you remember what you're erasing. He dropped the apocalypse sword. It clattered against stone, its reality-warping aura momentarily disrupting the pressure around him. The will of the system paused, data streams flickering as if processing this illogical action. Leo turned his back on the entity, a move that sent fresh agony through his cracked ribs, and faced the heart of the first forge. The ancient anvil stood there, carved from a single block of star metal according to the prophecy fragments. The forge fires, which had burned for millennia without fuel, pulsed with colors no human eye should perceive. This was where reality had first been given form, according to the ancients. This was where he would either transcend or cease. From his inventory, he summoned the remaining materials. Apocalypse ore, black as void, cold as entropy. Reality shard, a fragment of crystallized possibility that refracted light into futures that never were. And deep in his soul, he felt the last resource, his own lifespan, the finite measure of his existence in this system-governed world. The will of the system seemed to understand before Leo even moved. Cease. Unauthorized crafting protocol detected. Threat level, catastrophic. Light tendrils shot toward Leo, but he was already moving. Not with his battered body, that could barely stand, but with system override LV-1. He didn't try to control the system, that was impossible at his level. Instead, he did something simpler, he requested access. The skill was crude, barely functional, but it worked. For 1/10 of a second, the system's defensive protocols around the forge hesitated, confused by a legitimate access request from a user it was trying to delete. The light tendrils wavered. Leo placed the apocalypse ore on the anvil. Then he placed his hands on either side of it, not with tools, but with bare flesh. The ore was so cold it burned, so dark it seemed to drink the light from his eyes. He began to forge. Not with hammer blows. Not with enchantments. He forged with intention, with memory, with every near-death experience Artisan's reckoning had recorded. The rage-imbued sword that nearly got him torn apart by berserk adventurers. The sentient armor that called lightning from a clear sky. The bow that misfired elemental chaos. The key that unlocked this very forge at the cost of his life force. Each memory became a hammer strike in his mind, shaping the ore not into a weapon, but into a concept, defiance. The will of the system recovered. Termination imminent. A beam of pure systemic energy lanced toward Leo. He didn't dodge. Couldn't. Instead, he poured more of himself into the forging. His stamina, already at 0%, dipped into negative values. His vision tunneled. The internal bleeding worsened, he could feel warm blood pooling in his abdomen. But his hands remained steady on the cold ore. The beam struck. An artisan's reckoning triggered. Not from surviving an attack, this was different. This was from crafting while under terminal assault. The system that rewarded near death from his creations now recognized that the crafting itself was killing him. Leo felt the familiar rush, but magnified 100-fold. EXP flooded his senses, not the plus 500 or plus 550 of before, but a torrent that made his level counter spin wildly. But more importantly, knowledge flooded in. Transcendent Blacksmith LV-1. The skill didn't appear in his status window like others. It appeared in his soul. Suddenly, he understood crafting not as shaping materials, but as negotiating with reality. The apocalypse ore wasn't just matter, it was concentrated possibility. The reality shard wasn't just crystal, it was a frozen moment of what if. And his lifespan? That was the most precious material of all, time, the currency of existence. Leo took the reality shard and pressed it into the apocalypse Oregon. The two materials didn't fuse, they debated. Possibility versus actuality. What could be versus what was? Sparks flew, not of heat, but of competing timelines. Leo saw flashes, a world where the system apocalypse never happened. A world where he was a warrior instead of a blacksmith. A world where this forge remained sealed forever. He rejected them all. This timeline. This reality. This him. With transcendent blacksmith guiding hands that were no longer entirely his, he began the true forging. Each movement drew from his lifespan. He felt years peel away, 5, 10, 20. His hair didn't turn gray, his skin didn't wrinkle. Instead, memories faded. The face of his first customer blurred. The taste of his last meal before the apocalypse vanished. The sound of his mother's voice grew distant. He was paying with his past to buy a future. The will of the system intensified its attack. More beams, now accompanied by systemic commands that tried to rewrite Leo's very biology. Class reassignment, null, dot. Status effect, existential erasure, dot. Skill lock, all, dot. Leo ignored them. With Transcendent Blacksmith, he wasn't just overriding the system, he was speaking its language. When it tried to reassign his class, he showed it his crafting log, every item, every near-death, every level gained through Artisan's reckoning. The system's commands faltered, confronted with data that contradicted its error assessment. When it tried to apply existential erasure, Leo poured more lifespan into the forging. 30 years gone. 40. The hammer, for it was becoming a hammer now, began to take shape. Not a weapon of war, but a tool of creation. Its head was the apocalypse ore, now glowing with internal light. Its handle was the reality shard, extended and woven with the threads of Leo's remaining years. 50 years. Leo gasped. He was in his 20s. Paying 50 years meant, he might not have minutes left. The math was cruel and immediate. The hammer pulsed. God-forged steel, a new material that appeared not in his inventory, but as the very substance of the hammer. It wasn't steel at all, but solidified intent. The intent to craft. The intent to survive. The intent to defy a system that said, blacksmiths don't matter. Artisan's reckoning triggered again, but differently this time. No EXP. No skill unlocks. Just a message, clear as crystal in his mind, craft complete, reality's rebuttal. Material cost, 55 years of user lifespan. Remaining, approximately 3 minutes at current burn rate. Leo lifted the hammer. It weighed nothing and everything. In his hands, it felt like holding a star that hadn't decided whether to shine or collapse. The head glowed with apocalyptic potential, not destruction, but the end of one state and beginning of another. The handle thrummed with reality's consent, as if the very laws of physics were waiting to see what he would do. The will of the system paused its assault. Data streams froze mid-calculation. The entity of light and information seemed, for the first time, uncertain. What have you done? It vibrated, not with anger now, but with something like awe. Leo didn't answer. He turned, hammer in hand, body broken but spirit burning with the last minutes of his life. He raised reality's rebuttal high, its glow illuminating the ancient forge, the spatial rifts, the hovering system entity. The hammer didn't just contain power, it contained a question. A question posed to the system itself: if a novice blacksmith can craft tools that reshape reality, what does that say about your classifications? If near-death can become infinite growth, what does that say about your progression systems? If one man with a hammer can stand against the will of creation itself, what does that say about your apocalypse? Leo knew the next strike would answer that question. Either by shattering the system's boundaries and freeing himself and this merged world from rigid class destiny, or by erasing him from existence as the last of his lifespan burned away in the backlash. He took a breath, one of maybe 20 he had left, and prepared to swing. The hammer descended. Leo's muscles screamed, his bones felt like glass about to shatter, and the 55 years of stolen lifespan burned through his veins like liquid fire. Reality's rebuttal, a hammer forged from Apocalypse or reality shard, and his own mortality, connected with the will of the system in a silence so profound it felt like the universe had forgotten how to make sound. Then the world exploded. Light, raw and blinding, erupted from the point of impact. Not the warm light of dawn or the harsh glare of magic, this was data given form, the fundamental code of existence unraveling. The first forge, that ancient pocket dimension, dissolved into fractals of shimmering information. Leo saw equations for gravity snap like twigs, the laws of thermodynamics rewrite themselves in midair, and the concept of space tear like wet parchment. He was at the epicenter. The backlash hit him not as heat or force, but as existential erasure. His very identity, Leo, the blacksmith, the man who'd survived 100 near deaths, began to pixelate at the edges. Memories blurred, his first forge, the iron dagger, Kale's berserk rage, Elara's partnership offer, Sir Alistair's terrified face after the lightning storm. They slipped away like sand through fingers he could no longer feel. This is it, he thought, the words formless in a mind coming undone. The final craft. The one that kills its maker. But deep within the unraveling, the artisan's reckoning system, his cheat, his curse, his salvation, stirred. It had always been a glitch, a paradox in the system's logic. Now, faced with total annihilation, it did what it was designed to do, it calculated survival against impossible odds. Artisan's reckoning triggered. Catastrophic backlash detected, reality collapse event. Survival probability, 0.0001%. Condition met, near-fatal encounter caused by own craft. Rewards processing. The notification burned behind his eyes, the only solid thing in the dissolving chaos. EXP flooded his being, not the trickle from dodging a monster's claw or the surge from a berserk adventure, but an ocean of experience, the sum total of every risk he'd ever taken, every brush with death he'd engineered. His body, what was left of it, convulsed as levels skyrocketed. +1,000 EXP. Level 1617. +1,000 EXP. Level 1718. +1,000 EXP. Level 1819. The numbers blurred together, a cascade of growth that should have taken lifetimes. With each level, his crumbling form stabilized slightly. The pixelation slowed. The fading memories snapped back into focus, not just returned, but etched into his soul with diamond clarity. He remembered the weight of his first hammer, the scent of hot iron, the exact shade of terror in Brand's eyes when the skeleton horde emerged. Level 20 reached. Novice Blacksmith class evolution available. Transcendent Blacksmith LV, 1 LV max. System Override LV, 1 LV max. New skills unfolded in his mind, not as unlocks but as revelations. System Override, once a fragile hack, now felt like holding the system's source code in his hands. He could feel the glitch corrector protocols straining against him, and with a thought, he smoothed them, not by force but by understanding, showing the system that his existence wasn't an error, but a necessary variable. Then came the final evolution. Class evolution, Transcendent Blacksmith Worldforging Artisan. Artisan's reckoning system integration complete. New passive ability unlocked, Balanced Craft. Effect, can craft items of any tier without requiring near-death encounters. Growth now tied to mastery, innovation, and teaching. The change was seismic. The desperate, hungry loop that had defined his life, craft dangerously, sell, almost die, repeat, snapped. In its place settled a profound, steady certainty. He no longer needed to flirt with oblivion to grow. The power was in his hands, tempered by responsibility. As the realization solidified, the cataclysm around him began to change. The explosive light of data didn't vanish, it softened, weaving itself back into the fabric of reality. The first forge reassembled, but different, no longer a sealed tomb, but a luminous workshop where the walls shimmered with gently flowing streams of golden code. The air hummed with stable, creative potential. Before him, the will of the system, the colossal entity of light and data, had not been destroyed. It had been reconfigured. The hostile, correcting glare was gone. In its place stood a serene, androgynous figure of shimmering energy, its form suggesting both armor and artisan's robes. Error, corrected, it spoke, its voice now a harmonious chime rather than a judgmental boom. Anomaly Leo reclassified. Not a glitch. A balancing force. The system recognizes the world-forging artisan. Purpose, to stabilize creation through craft. To ensure power does not corrupt. To teach so others may build without destruction. Leo lowered the hammer. Reality's rebuttal felt different in his grip, still unimaginably powerful, but no longer hungry for his life. The 55-year cost was frozen, his lifespan burn had stopped with seconds to spare. He'd be living with those missing memories, gaps where childhood friends or old loves might have been, but he was alive. More than alive. The near-death requirement, Leo said, his voice rough but steady. It's gone. The system entity nodded, a gesture that made starlight ripple. The artisan's reckoning system was a crutch for a broken world, a way to force growth through trauma. You have outgrown it. Your new path is sustainable. You will craft not from desperation, but from vision. The system will support you, provided you maintain balance. It extended a hand of light. A pact. You monitor the crafts that could tip the world into chaos. We provide materials from the edges of reality. Together, we ensure the new world thrives. Leo grasped the hand. There was no heat, no shock, just a firm, cool certainty, like gripping a perfectly balanced tool. Deal. As their hands touched, the final changes settled. His status stabilized. Name, Leo. Class, World Forging Artisan, Legendary. Level, 20, Max. Skills, all previous skills integrated and mastered. New focus, Balanced Craft, Reality Weaving LV Max, System Harmony LV 1. Inventory, Apocalypse Sword, Stabilized, Reality's Rebuttal Hammer, Dormant, no longer life-draining, God-forged steel, assorted legendary materials. Condition, Severe existential fatigue, missing 55 years of memory, otherwise stable. The system entity faded, its purpose fulfilled. Go. Your world awaits its artisan. Leo awoke to the scent of fresh pine and hot metal. He was lying in a bed, not in the first forge, but in a familiar yet altered space. Sunlight streamed through a high window, illuminating floating motes of dust that glittered like powdered diamond. He sat up, muscles aching but whole, and looked around. This was his shop, Reckoning Forge, but transformed. The charred walls from past explosions were now smooth, living wood that seemed to grow naturally into shelves and workbenches. His anvil, once scarred and simple, was a block of polished God-forged steel, humming softly. Tools hung in perfect array, each glowing with a faint inner light. The space felt both cozy and cathedral-like, immense yet intimate. He stood, testing his limbs. The cracked ribs, nerve damage, internal bleeding, all healed, though a deep, tired ache remained in his bones, the phantom pain of 100 near-deaths. The memory gaps were still there, like shadows in his mind, but they no longer frightened him. They were the cost of victory, and he would carry them. A soft chime echoed through the shop. The front door, now a grand archway of intertwined iron and crystal, had opened. Leo walked out, barefoot on cool, polished stone. The street outside was bustling, but not with the panic of the early system apocalypse. This was a thriving marketplace in a stabilized new world. People, humans and beings from the merged fantasy realm, moved with purpose. Stalls sold enchanted fruits, armorers displayed gleaming gear, and children laughed chasing a floating light sprite. And they were all lined up at his door. A queue stretched down the street, hundreds long. Adventurers in sleek guild armor, merchants in rich robes, even a few shy-looking novices with their first hammers. At the front stood Alara, leader of the Adventurers Guild, her usual stern face softened by a smile. "Took you long enough," she said, but her eyes were bright. 3 days, Leo. The whole city thought you were dead after that light show in the sky. Then your shop rebuilt itself. Overnight. And the system broadcast a notification to every citizen. Leo raised an eyebrow. What did it say? Ilara cleared her throat, mimicking the system's melodic new tone. Announcement: the world-forging artisan, Leo, has stabilized the system. Reckoning Forge is now open for balanced, high-tier crafting. No catastrophic side effects guaranteed. She grinned. You're a legend. They're calling you the man who tamed the apocalypse. Behind her, the queue stirred with excitement. A burly dwarf held up a broken axe head, shouting, "Can ye fix this with no explosions, artisan?" A young elf girl whispered to her mother, "I want to learn how he makes things." Leo looked at them, the adventurer seeking reliable power, the crafter seeking knowledge, the ordinary people seeking safety in a world remade. This was his new purpose. Not just to craft, but to teach. To ensure the next generation didn't need to risk death to grow. He caught his reflection in the shop's crystal door, a man in simple blacksmith's leathers, hair streaked with premature silver from sacrificed years, eyes that had seen too much but still held a spark. He wasn't the desperate novice anymore. He was the world-forging artisan. No explosions, he called out, his voice carrying easily over the crowd. At least, not uncontrolled ones. Bring your projects. Bring your ideas. We'll build something that lasts. As the first client stepped forward, a nervous rookie with a design for a self-cooling water flask, Leo felt a genuine smile spread across his face. The hammer was hung on the wall, the sword sheathed. The reckoning was over. The rebirth had just begun. And somewhere in the back of the queue, he spotted a familiar scowling face, Goran, the rival blacksmith, arms crossed, but without the old jealousy. Instead, there was a grudging respect, and maybe, just maybe, a hint of curiosity. Leo nodded to him, then turned to the rookie, already explaining how to channel ambient magic without unstable enchantments. The line stretched into the sunlit street, full of possibilities. His legacy would not be one of fear, but of creation. And for the first time since the world ended, Leo felt truly at peace.